the Starting Line podcast with me, Rich Leigh. Now, what do you think when you think of Jamaica? You might think of hot, sandy beaches, the climate. You might think of their food, their cuisine. You might think of reggae sauce, Levi Roots. Our first ever guest, in fact, on the Starting Line podcast. Go back to Series 1, Episode 1. You can listen to it. It was before we were filming. So you can go and listen to Levi's story, which was a phenomenal episode. You might think of reggae itself, music, and Bob Marley, and all of that. You might think of rum. I bet you also think of Bobsled. Because of the 1994 film, Cool Runnings, Jamaica's kind of become synonymous with bobsled. And in particular, the 1988 Calgary Winter Olympics, in which today's guest, Tal Stokes, was the captain of the Jamaican bobsled team. The inspiration for that film. In this episode, you will find out how that film was made, why that film was made, whether there'll be a sequel, whether there could be a sequel. Tal was not a fan. The fact is, it's a beloved film. Most people enjoy it. Most people, it's a funny, family-friendly film, right? Tal didn't love it. He said it turned them into clowns, not competitors. And this interview, you will find out Tal is a competitor. Tal was a lot of fun to chat to. We, in fact, went for almost 3 hours. So it's a longer one, just like this waffle. Oh, yeah, on which note, a lot of people say, oh, God, there's a lot of waffle at the beginning. There is. I like to set the scene. If you don't like it, please do feel free to skip. I'll probably skip me too. But, the interview itself is brilliant. It actually took place, funny story, in a Masonic lodge. You'll see it if you go to YouTube. You'll see this Grand Master's chair, or I'm probably getting things wrong, and a load of plaques around the room that, with names of people and things like that. It was crazy. I didn't know when I booked it that it was a Masonic lodge. I was just told the place where Tal would be, and hey, if you could find a venue, that'd be great. I found a venue. It was a beautiful venue, but yeah, it turns out it was. This is where we were interrupted a couple of times by men with briefcases. So yeah, it was an interesting venue, to say the least. An even better conversation, and I hope you'll agree. Just Tal's a fascinating, fantastic guy. A lot to go through. With all that said, without further ado, I bring to you my conversation with Dudley Tal Stokes. Enjoy. So it is Tal. Is Tal,
Tal.
Is Tal a nickname? What's the deal with Tal?
Dudley Clifford Talmash. So Dudley Clifford are my father's names,
right.
Sort of a family tradition.
Yeah.
And 3 names.
Yeah.
So Talmash is your unique name.
Yeah,
which
Talmash.
Yes.
How do you spell
that?
that?
Father's Talmage.
M-A-G-E.
So my father's best friend at the time of my birth was, his first name was Talmash.
Oh, okay.
So that's how come. Not many around.
I was going to say, I've never heard that name in my life.
Yeah, I found a few.
Yeah, because you grew up Turks and Caicos Islands.
Born in first 5 years.
Born the first 5 years, so that's where you were. Yeah. So talk me through from there, because I think, as I said to you beforehand, we can get into Cool Runnings and bobsled and all that stuff, but I want to know who you are. I want to know where, not just where you were born. Everybody can Wikipedia that. I want to know what it was like. So you grew up, that's where you were born, that's where you grew up for 5 years.
Yeah, so my parents were there as missionaries. So they were Jamaican.
Right.
They got married and shipped out to Grand Turk, which in 1962 was as bad as it got. Really, no electricity, no running water. Sort of 5 major islands and a lot of minor ones, miles and miles by sea. My father had to journey to minister to different people. Right. And my mom stayed home. So I was born in a manse, huge, but and then grew up, spent 5 years there. Now my brother...
Quite a small place, right? It's like, I think population...
7 miles long by a quarter mile wide at the widest point. That's Grand Turk.
That's crazy.
So there are 1,500 people there now, but I think there were maybe as many as 3,500 people at one stage. But it's been up and down.
How big was it when you were there? Like when you were born there? Was it...
It was going up.
Yeah.
It was
that's a village. isn't it? That's a
tiny.
That's
tiny
a small
place.
little place.
Everybody, knew
Do you
everybody's-
remember? Because if you moved when you were 5, do you remember growing up there at all?
Not really. We had home movies, film when I was young. So I saw those when I was 8 or 9, and I have memories of that.
So
You know
kind
what
of
I mean? Grand Turk.
seeing the video kind of triggers a memory of,
right.
but you
I
don't
couldn't tell
really.
you that. Yeah, I remember.
And you said that your brother was then born there too.
No, my mother we're 18 months apart, and in that time she buried so many babies and mothers. Because if you got sick on Grand Turk, then there's no medical facilities.
Right, wow.
So people died in childbirth. So when she found out she was pregnant again, she went back to Jamaica.
Right. Just because she just didn't want the risk of it.
Yeah.
So you were born there though?
I was born there.
You were born there. I mean, that's a risk. Are you the eldest?
I am.
You are. So I guess they didn't think of
nobody knew it. Came up on as a surprise.
So they probably you wouldn't have been born there had she thought,
No, if she knew then, as people say, well,
what she then know.
Yeah, no way. No way. But it went.
And that's your brother, Chris.
Chris.
Yeah. So he was born 18 months later in Jamaica. And then did your mum come back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you a story. He was born with a very rare condition, and his stomach was closed at the pyloric sphincter. And he was born at like 14 pounds, and within a week he was 7 pounds because he couldn't eat.
He was born at 14 pounds.
Yeah, it was huge.
That's I've just had like my fourth just born 6'8".
Yeah.
And then she went down to 5'12", and she's about 8 pounds now, maybe.
My
6 weeks old.
youngest was 10 pounds, but the other two were 8 and 6.
So like normal sizes.
Normal
your
size,
brother's why is it he's a monster?
Yeah,
but he lost a load of weight because of this condition.
Right, and they had to operate on him. It would never have happened in Turks. So had she not gone home,
he probably would have
died.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's
Gosh, so that was at birth though. So he so at birth they were like, oh, he needs a support now. So he had the operation straight away.
Yeah.
Did you know anything, or were you still back in Turks?
No, I was in Turks.
Yeah, with your dad.
Yeah, as well as 18 months.
Yeah, of course, that's it. So your dad was ministering, you said.
Yeah.
So what does that involve?
Going to different churches, invariably on different islands, and holding sermons, trying to get to each church at least once a month.
Right.
And then you had lay people the rest of the time.
And how many churches are we talking?
There may have been 6 in the district by then, over 3 or 4 islands.
Did it feel like your dad was present, or was he always traveling?
I don't really have a recollection of that.
I guess.
But I'm told that he was always traveling on a small.
So who was looking after you? Who was looking after baby Tal?
A lady whom I don't remember either, but she was kind of like a nanny, but no training, just doing traditional stuff, right?
All the things.
But she apparently was phenomenal because she got my brother back to 14 pounds within a week of him getting back to Grand Turk.
Jesus.
So apparently we were well looked after.
Yeah. Good. And so you moved back to Jamaica, or your parents moved back to Jamaica for your first time, presumably. Whereabouts?
So we went to the north coast of Jamaica, a place called Galena, which is where we lived, which is the big thing about Galena is that the lighthouse there is the closest point to Cuba on the Jamaican island. But my father moved back to what they call a circuit of churches in the Baptist church in the St. Mary region. And so we lived in Galena. The main church was in Port Maria, which was about 3 miles away. And then he had, again, 6 churches around the parishes. So that was fun because we grew up. I mean, nobody was watching you,
Was it just you and Chris then? Was it?
So our sister came along in 66.
Okay. Because you were 62.
62.
Yeah.
Then 63.
Yeah.
And then 66. So, but, we just played, went through the hills.
Right.
And
it's just that play-based childhood that just doesn't happen anymore. Right? Just doesn't happen. So
and nobody would, you left home in the morning, and you came home for dinner. There was no panic.
It's good to know that was the same in Jamaica as it was here. Because everybody I speak to that grew up around then says the exact same thing. I mean, I guess I was probably, because I was born in 87. In fact, I was born in October 87. which is a significant date for you.
Yes, it is.
So we'll get into that. But so I was probably one of the last generations, I guess, to have that, where you go out and then you come back.
Health and safety and
phones and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, it's crazy now.
So what kind of parents, like, what were your mum and dad like?
They, in retrospect, they really stuck together primarily because of children.
Do you think?
And and I've had this discussion with my mother. My father died in 2010. But they had a difficult personal relationship between them. But we didn't know about it, not until I was in my late teens.
Oh, okay.
That, they were having trouble. And so they kept it hidden. They kept us provided for. And they both were educators at heart, so we got a decent education along the way. On balance, you shouldn't complain. Could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, people don't do that really now, do they? The whole
no. And maybe
I think, how do you feel about that? Do you think that's for the best? Do you think, how would your life be different?
It depends on, it's really, I mean, their life. There are people who are married for decades and decades, but at some point the marriage died, or somebody died within the marriage, and somebody ends up, or two people, basically miserable for decades and decades. And that cannot be what living is about.
No, I agree.
But if you have a purpose, like if you have children for whom you need to provide a home, a stable environment, a safe place, and raise them, then bearing some discomfort, which is basically what happened. We left home and then they separated and then they divorced. Yeah, it worked almost like clockwork.
So your sister's name? What was your sister's name?
Terry.
So Terry. So the three of you were born within a few years of each other.
Right.
So I guess at what age did your parents then, or how old was Terry then when your parents kind of separated? Was it straight away?
Of course, the youngest. So she would have. I left home at 18.
Yeah.
And they were kind of bearded together. So by the time I was 20, they had separated, which would put her at about 14 or 15.
As a minister, would that have been difficult for him, the whole concept of divorce?
Yeah, it was. And then the church and
how did the church feel about that?
Not happy.
No.
It was not usual.
Yeah.
But by this time,
so we're talking in the 80s.
In the 80s, but he wasn't practicing anymore. He had moved
full
time into education.
Okay.
And I think that gave him some leeway to act.
He probably wouldn't have been able to do it within the church.
Not easily. I mean,
to then go and minister for people that are saying,
But ministers leave their wives all the time in the church.
Really?
Yeah, but they don't get divorced. It just
I see.
melts away.
Yeah. So what was a young Tal like? What were you? You said you went off and you got into trouble with Chris. Like what sort of?
Precocious.
Yeah.
And my mother said to me recently that she's happy she took the time to answer all the questions I had for her because it's worked out. I'm sure how well it's worked out. Apparently, I was inquisitive, curious, constantly talking and always questioning. And so...
But did you read a lot? Were you quite were you always active? Like what kind of kid were you in that sense?
I was physically active and I did read a lot.
Yeah, what sort of stuff did you read?
So my mother was a geographer.
Right.
And when I became conscious, there were 15 years of National Geographic magazines in the house.
Yeah.
What first drew me to them was the African grasslands and all the ladies running around. Not much.
I remember that.
Right, So that drew me to National Geographic, and then it went on from there. And I mean, wealth of knowledge, all the things in there.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. It's still incredible, and I think that kind of driving towards the pursuit of knowledge. I think we're missing that in education now. I think we miss through everything being geared towards exams and everything being geared towards, you must learn how to pass the exam. We miss the pursuit of knowledge and the curiosity and the passion of education. I think we lose something of that in our children every year that goes by, and every year where there's more targets, every year where the teachers are like, no, this is what I need to get as a percentage, all of those things.
And I know it's become, it's been MBA'd. Is what it has been.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the only thing, there's nothing that you need to know in life that's taught in schools. No. And that wasn't always the case.
Right. What was school like
School
for you?
used to be about people criticize reading, writing, and arithmetic. Basic, because with those things, you on your own can get whatever else you need to get. But I think the fundamental work of school is to give you a framework in which to think about things.
Absolutely.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And that may even have been changing over the lifetime of your children.
Yeah.
It certainly did over mine. And I think it's distressing, and there are consequences, and we're going to have to deal with them if we're not dealing with them already. Yeah, MBA, it's key performance indicators and graphs and maps and this
rather than okay. I mean, when you picked up that National Geographic and you put down the fifth one, because you've just been poring over it. Think of what you're taking in then. Think of the curiosity and the
huge amounts of stuff which you don't know.
You're incredibly well traveled as well. That's something that I've found.
Yeah, that
do you
came
think that
later.
it did? But do you think that came about as a result of that curiosity, and obviously what you ended up then doing became something that enabled you to
it
travel?
gave me a familiarity
Yeah.
with foreign places and foreign concepts, which allowed me not to be intimidated when I got into that. So when I came to the UK as an 18-year-old to go to the Royal Military Academy in Sandhurst, an 18-year-old black man who was born on a place 7 miles by a quarter mile.
Did it feel like, where felt like home to you? Like, where did Turks and Caicos, did that feel like home, or did Jamaica
always felt like home growing up. I'm a
second
thoroughly Jamaican person.
Good.
I should say I live in the Turks and Caicos now,
Yeah.
and I've developed quite a liking for the place and an appreciation of it. But that's been pretty much in the last 15 years.
Right. Okay.
But before that,
So what made you come to, and I'm you, as you said, an 18-year-old black man, first time in the UK. I'm fascinated to hear that. But what made you, 5 years old, you go to Jamaica, you have that education, you have that upbringing. Your parents split at around that age when you're about 18. What are you like as a teenager? And then what makes you decide, okay, the British Army is for me?
I was thrust into a leadership position pretty early in our family, where as a teenager. By the time I got to 14, the cracks were beginning to show in my parents' relationship. And I ended up sort of being the arbiter. I was always weighing on this side and that side, and some of them were pretty heavy decisions as to where to go, where to live.
As an upbringing, was there any violence in the house? Was there anything like that?
Yeah, no, it was coming apart. So there wasn't actually violence as in anybody got struck, but there was quite a lot of shouting and folk getting in folks' face, and it was a very unpleasant environment for a bit of a time, and I actually had to physically get between them.
Yeah, because you're 6 foot now.
I wasn't quite that.
So 14. When did you shoot up? When did you start to get some?
Actually, I grew up pretty early.
Yeah.
So I would say, by the time I was 16, I was tall enough, but I didn't have the weight on.
Yeah.
But it was, kind of doing what needed to be done in the moment rather than who you were.
I hear you. I did a lot of that.
Right.
The reason I'm fascinated by that is, and again, all of these things interlink because, being one of the founding members of the bobsled team, there's a quote where you said that I personally was very driven because I recognized the mountain that was in front of me. So I was not particularly nice to the rest of the team. It's something you've said. Now, that to me sounds like a leader that knows what they're doing. That's what that sounds like. And so I'm just trying to tie 14-year-old Tal to somebody that comes to the UK at 18. You're still young. 18 is still young. And then, you're thrust into a leadership role in an unfamiliar position. And then, that's how you decide to kind of take that leadership mantle on is to be, okay, I know where we're going, and you're not necessarily going to like me.
Yeah, well, certainly by that time. But the thing is, when as I look back, being as exposed as I was to all sorts of things but through the National Geographic, Time magazine, Vietnam War, I remember, we're a religious family, affiliated to the Southern Baptists, and this lady came and stayed with us for 6 weeks when I was a child, and her husband was in Vietnam. We would spend the evenings watching TV, and then she'd say, "Oh, that's his area." Then there's a battle going on, and she'd be calling home, and they'd be waiting on the telegram, and she lived like that.
Scary, isn't it?
Yeah. So I had all of those experiences, and then I had the experiences just holding the family together at an early age. I never had a childhood. I never really had a chance to be responsible or to do things.
I say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And with whether it's physical conflict or otherwise, when there's any conflict, you do lose something of that ability to be responsible.
So all the facade is ripped away. You don't see the fantasy. It's not a fairy tale, and this is real, and it's painful. And I mean, I went through some things in those couple of years. The worst thing was my mother's depression, which is understandable now that we look back, and we've spoken about it and so on. But that was, the house was a dark place. You cross the threshold, and it's like you had gone into some kind of dungeon, or sucked out, and so on, and you live like that. And you're constantly listening for signs of stress and jumping in. And then I had a younger brother and sister, so you're trying to not let them see any more of this than they needed to. You follow me? And keep them out and so on. And so it was tough. You had to be concentrated all the time.
Yeah.
And then
your mother's depression, do you think as a result of the relationship, or was there other factors?
Oh, that's a big part. And she had very bad depression for a number of years, and eventually, before I left home, we had just moved to the North Coast, to Montego Bay, and she had a new psychiatrist, who was a Canadian guy, who told her that, I've given you 12 months, and after that, if you're not past this, I can't help you. And he said, they're taking you off your meds, but he knew how to do that in doses and so on. And we're going to talk about this, and she came out the other side.
Wow! So that did help. That
but she has never had another day, and I really didn't expect her to live, to be honest.
And you said she's still with us now. So where does she live?
She lives in Jamaica.
She's in Jamaica.
Yeah,
do you see her
83, often? And she's started in the last 5 years 3 new businesses, and so she's making up for lost time with a vengeance.
Wow, what businesses is she starting? Just out of interest, sounds like I should be talking to your mum as well. She's
into small business finance. She's into the whole data protection region, and providing services to organizations and companies around the DPR, the data protection. And she has as a charity, she started an animal sort of welfare organization that she's working on. And she's building a consultancy, training, education.
At the age of 80?
Yeah.
Did you say 85?
83. 84 this year.
Yeah.
And a couple of them were started during lockdown.
She's just one of those people. She's just...
Yeah, just boundless energy.
Yeah.
And,
do you think that rubbed off on you?
Some.
Yeah.
But you know that your mitochondria, your power comes from the mother, right?
Yeah.
So I keep telling my children that.
it's not from me. Yeah. There you go.
No, they're lucky with that. Their mother is a dynamo as well.
No, brilliant.
But no, she's full of energy, very driven, but also I mean, we talk frequently, and
Yeah.
she's constantly evaluating herself and trying to grow.
That's
mentally
amazing, isn't
at
it? So
83.
I think the people that just don't, what's the saying? It's learn like you're going to live forever, live like you're going to die like you die today,
tomorrow, right?
Or tomorrow,
exactly.
yeah. So it's absolutely butchered a beautiful quote, but learn like you're going to live forever, and it sounds like as you say, that age to still be I've got to keep doing this, I've got to keep moving, curious and and creating. That's phenomenal, especially to come through maybe what she came through. I mean,
and changing as well.
Yeah.
As I have new information and new things, and not easy. She doesn't change easy, but she does. She's capable of doing it.
Do any of us? Do any of us?
And the older we get, the harder it becomes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
is being a minister good, well paid? Or?
No, it was a preacher and a teacher, and then 2 teachers. So there was no money.
Okay.
And that played a part in me leaving home at 18 because I went into the army, right?
Yes.
So I just took myself off the payroll altogether.
How did your parents feel about that? About you saying, "Do you know what? I'm off. I'm heading to the UK."
They both were shocked in different ways.
Right.
So my father was actually the chaplain of the Army Reserves.
Right.
And he was here and he loved soldiering and
had he done
that.
Some soldering? He
did as a cadet, as a youngster, and then he went into the ministry, and then he came back and he was the chaplain of the reserve regiment.
Right.
And he, as a teenager, he didn't see any future for me in the army.
Okay.
My mother was intent on me going to the university and becoming a lawyer.
Oh, okay.
And so she was working towards that. And then I came home and said that, well, I've been accepted in the army and I'm off.
How long between you saying that and you traveling was there?
Weekend.
A weekend?
Yeah, because I think I'd snuck away and gone to do a selection board.
Yeah. Where was the selection?
In Newcastle.
Right.
In above Kingston, Jamaica.
Yeah.
And we were in Montego, which is the other end of the island.
How far is that?
And it may be 100 miles. But it was a very difficult
so you snuck away for a day.
days.
So you snuck away for a day, or
I had some excuse about going to stay with somebody in Kingston.
Okay. Right.
And I went down and got a bus, and it was a 3.5-4 hour drive, and then it went on. But I knew my father was in the army, and I didn't actually want him to, and he would have pulled whatever strings, and as it is, he did. After when he discovered I was in there,
Right. Okay.
so I kind of hid that from him, and then was accepted, and then brought the news and went off.
How did Terry and Chris take that? Because they're losing another paternal figure in their life.
Yeah, I
losing
don't
eight
think
kids.
it was very emotional. I'm not even sure if they were home at the time.
Right.
I think I just came back and I wasn't there, which is, kind of cruel in his own way, but it was, for me, a kind of a cleanish.
You really wanted to get away.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you find it? So back to, you're 18 years old. You're a black man in the British Army in the 80s.
Yeah.
What would this have been?
81.
81, right.
81, yeah.
Okay. Talk to me about the experience.
Well, it all comes to those things. We had, from my intake, the 40th anniversary. That was, I think, 2020.
Yeah.
But because of
COVID.
the COVID lockdowns and so on, I think we celebrated it in 2022 or so. But anyway, so I went back and saw all the, the guys, and we had good conversation. And apparently I was pretty aggressive coming in. And
Have a lot to prove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was a scary character for the rest of the cadets.
You were?
Yeah.
Why?
So, just no nonsense. I did have an advantage coming because I'd spent 6 months in the Jamaica Defence Force before, but in a training environment and just doing upgraded training. So while waiting to go on a course, I became a trained soldier, then did a Lance Corporal course, then a full Corporal's course. I was on a Sergeant's course by the time I was shipped to Sanders. So when I arrived, I mean, I knew the basics.
Yes. Whereas a lot of those are brand new. They're green.
A lot of them were brand new. A lot of them came through a similar system.
I guess there are a lot. Sanders officers training.
Officers training, right? They had their own program for people who weren't quite ready, and they put them through that. So a lot of those cadets were actually in my unit and so on, and they had been around for a year, so they were kind of lording it. So I guess you put down a marker, and then you see how things go.
And you were quite happy with going in there and being quite to be that character. You wanted to be that character, yeah.
But I was also, I have to say, there were a number of guys ahead of me who had already put their foot down.
Right.
And these were, some fairly serious characters, good guys, but they were no nonsense guys. And so there was a reputation that Jamaicans kind of had to live up to. So there was a bit of that as well.
What did you have to live up to?
No, just a reputation of being no nonsense.
Yeah.
Because, people take advantage, especially of overseas cadets and so on. And it happens.
England in the 70s, 80s, post Brixton riots,
exactly.
all of those things. Like, did you experience any racism? Like, how did you find being in the British Army at that time?
Boy, it was a very confusing time, I think, looking back at it, because there are things that could be called racism.
Right.
And I think people thought that I was lesser than, but I put them in their place. And one of the ways I did that was through performance. And I just made sure I was at the top or near the top of everything. And they were fine with that as long as it was physical things and running and weapons training and so on. And I remember I had a guy who became a good friend, unfortunately died now, but he kept sarcastically saying, and you've never seen a gun before, have you? And so on. So there was that.
And you're like, mate, I was doing this for months before.
Yeah. But no, I didn't let on that I knew anything, because you have to keep those things close to your chest, and you have to suss out who is who and what's going on. I mean, these guys will destroy you if you let them. But when we got into the classroom, that was another level again, because I was way ahead.
Really?
And
do you think your mum had helped
because
with that?
all of the National Geographic and then the Time magazines and then the war magazines, which led onto all the history books and war and soldiering and different things and technology. That's actually top cadet in a number of places.
So it was really the perfect place for you.
Oh yeah.
It was exactly where you needed to be.
Yes.
So when you went in there, because you ended up as a helicopter pilot.
Right.
Was that the goal? Did you think, I want to...
No, I thought the helicopter was a low pressure overground vehicle that would replace a tank. Right. So I figured I'd learn how to fly a helicopter, but it didn't work out like that. Turns out, Jamaica wasn't big on big armored movements and that kind of stuff. So that was eventually a disappointment. But that was my real interest in helicopters from before, was just as kind of a machine of war. And it was kind of novel. Even in 81, it was still novel. Everybody thought this is the future.
Yeah. I mean, they're pretty cool. I was just saying on the way up, I think, because I rode motorbikes and things like that. I think I want to learn how to fly a helicopter. I think that's the next thing I want to do. I think it just seems like a lot of fun.
It is fun, and it's a unique kind of flying experience, just because
So I've flown small planes and things like that.
Yeah, but you come to a dead stop.
Yeah,
a place
absolutely.
Where you drop down in a field.
Yeah.
You pull up so it's great that way. It's a great skill to have. The difficult to fly, especially if you did. Most of my flying was sort of what Canadians would call bush flying. Right. It was kind of off-grid in backwards places where you had to figure things out for yourself. And
what was your hope when you went into the army? Where did you want to end up?
I thought I'd stay in the army and go to the top.
What's the top?
Be in charge of sort of a general, and in charge of the Jamaica Defence Force and so on. I didn't know that there was any other reason to do anything
other than to be the best you could be.
Yeah, and to be the best that you can be. So that was naively, as I look back at it, that was a thought. But the realities are different. An army in barracks or even in an internal security situation as opposed to being in a war situation is a different prospect, and at the same time difficult and boring. and that just wasn't for me.
Right. Yeah. So you trained at Sandhurst.
Yeah, so we
and then how long were you at Sandhurst?
2 year and a half, 18 months about.
And then back.
And then back. Yeah.
Okay. So then you're in Jamaica.
Right.
Got it. Okay. And then where do you go from there? So you're in barracks. There's no active war.
We were operational pretty much for the entire time that
Right.
I was serving there. So I remember Ronald Reagan's war on drugs.
Oh yeah.
Which in places became a real shooting war. All of those places being Jamaica. So we there was a lot of flying in different roles, but around that, as well as around civil unrest, which there was a fair amount going through the 80s. And it lost a few friends in that whole thing.
In civil unrest in Jamaica?
Just in flying, but in
flying.
flying operationally, so in
Right.
anti-drugs operations and different things. But to do with operations. So in that respect, it was different. And it's not, just a few years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine that we served together. And he was the one who pointed out that, that we were operational for like 5 continuous years. And that just doesn't happen. People get rotated out or to go away and so on, but you're just day on, day off.
What kind of missions? Forgive me, I'm a layman. I'm an idiot, and I don't mind being an idiot.
Yeah.
So just for the purpose of this, what kind of operations were you conducting? What kind of missions?
There were a lots of basically search and destroy. So we would fly to different areas with intelligence, photographs from airplanes mostly and so on, spot fields where things are going, labs, this, that, and all. You plan raids and you spend your days going in there, cutting down, burning down, that kind of stuff. Occasionally rounding up people coming out. Right. Then there were a lot of
that must
interception.
Have been highly conflict heavy. Like, people don't want...
No, they're not happy.
Yeah.
We're talking about the whole villages are dependent on these things and you're burning things out.
Yeah.
Now we did massive raids, 5, 6 helicopters going into people's, going into whole villages and literally going house to house. Every house has a basement with drugs and so on.
What drugs are we talking about here?
Mostly marijuana, hash oil.
Yeah.
Very occasionally cocaine at that point. But then there's also intercept operations. So at the time, Jamaica was a huge transshipment point. So drugs coming out of South America, they have what they call shared risk in the drug trafficking business. So the South Americans would undertake to get it to Jamaica, and then North Americans would get it from Jamaica and go. So they had an opportunity for there was a change between drugs coming in, being stored, and then going out. And then we started hitting all these storage places and so on. And then they switched to just changing out on a runway. And there were a couple, so there was a lot of intelligence work again when it was coming in, and then, you would fly a mission and head in and try and catch the guys on the ground, and guys would be taking off while you're flying in, and it could be confusion and all sorts of stuff. So it was...
What were your personal thoughts on that? Because, cannabis and hash oil, like, there are these big operations, but, like, did you have any personal thoughts or judgments or considerations for...
I wouldn't say along those lines. I did have reservations because I did wonder what the folk on the ground were going to do.
Yeah.
They weren't doing what they're doing. And the women and children would be crying, while they were burning out the place and so on. So it was material in their lives. So that was probably the main source of my reservation.
Yeah.
As for, and I guess I became very cynical in the end, when kind of the scope of the whole operation, the involvement of people in high places and so on, and then when you bury your friends and you see guys at the funeral who basically are the cause of the death, then that leaves a bitter taste in your mouth.
Yeah. How do you reflect now upon your time in the army?
One of the best times of my life. Sandhurst, one of the best times of my life.
Did you get to travel around the UK at all?
Yeah,
You did.
The UK and Europe and so on.
Yeah. Cool.
So I met my wife in basic training in Newcastle. Yeah. Obviously, it wasn't a wife at the time. We didn't get married for 5 years.
Newcastle, UK?
No, Newcastle.
Newcastle, Jamaica.
So she was in the army.
Sorry. Yeah.
And we met on basic training. She was a little behind me. And then we kept in touch, and eventually, we got together.
What was she doing?
So she was a soldier.
The soldier.
Yeah. She was the first female soldier to be fully integrated. So she underwent the full training course, and ended up in her intake. Well, she was in they had to have a tie-break shoot-off for the best shot in the intake between her and another cadet. And she lost that for some reasons other than shooting. But, she's a real... I don't think you could call her a tomboy, because she was in a beauty contest where she did very well, in Miss Jamaica and so on. So,
as in one Miss Jamaica?
She didn't win, no. She was in the top 6. Jeez.
Jesus. Done well, Tal.
Yeah, no, she remains good looking, and she's still a good shot.
Wonderful. Yeah, well, so you've got to say that she remains good looking.
Absolutely. I say you never hear the bullet that kills you.
No. So, do you know? Again, I love this one. I've not even looked at my notes really. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I love to get to this. So, so you were in the army. How long was it then until I guess you got to the point where the head of sport in the army is
Ken Barnes.
Ken, yes, of course, is Ken Barnes. Now, British people certainly, and probably people outside, will know Ken Barnes as John Barnes' dad.
Right.
John Barnes grew up as I was growing up, and Liverpool were doing well. Ian Rush and John Barnes those players. So that John Barnes. How did you get to meet him? And were you always quite sporty within the army?
Yeah. So I came out of high school as I played football at a fairly high level, and then I went to Sandhurst. I played for Sandhurst.
Wow. What position did you play?
Ways. I played at right back mostly, sometimes as a central defender. We went a long way in that competition, and then I came back, and it was difficult flying and so on, but eventually I got into the army sporting program and into the football program, and to Ken Barnes' attention.
Right. Okay.
And he was big on officers doing sport.
Yeah. Just because of the visibility of it, to bring other people into it.
To bring other people, but also he thought that it showed character and it helped it to develop, which it did.
I mean,
it does.
I talk endlessly about sport. Talk to me about that. So do you believe that it shows character? What do you feel about sport?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My personal philosophy is you begin with the physicality. So we need to understand that we're physical beings before anything else. And if our physicality isn't right, it's very difficult to have anything else. So we talk about a mental health crisis. If you don't have physical health right, if your gut microbiome isn't working, if you're not producing your neurotransmitters and your hormones in the right quantities at the right time and getting them to the right places, mental health is next to an impossibility. Now you're going to have to start to induce these things with drugs and so on. And so physicality is fundamental. But also being physical in sport, but contact sport as well. And it goes for women as I think as well. I don't think that there's any difference. That contact sport really develops your mentality, right? When you've been punched in the face, it puts all other kinds of things in perspective. It's really hard for somebody to send you over the edge with a word or whatever. When you really know what it's like to feel pain, and you go shoulder to shoulder with somebody and you feel power and you compete, I think that is essential to developing character and a life outlook. And I think everybody should participate in some kind of sport, and there is enough stuff out there for you to find something to do, and you don't have to be an Olympian, but you do have to put your body through its paces because that's what it's made for.
I think I couldn't have said it better. So, again, Tal, I don't just want you to say back what I want to hear, but I guess I've spoken to lots of sports people, on this so far. Lots of people that we connect on that level of. I think it teaches you competitivity. It teaches you how to win. It teaches you how to lose. It teaches you how to work as a unit. It teaches you how to be both competitive but also compassionate, and to put diet and fitness and those things top of the tree. Yeah. And I always say it, when I'm most stressed, what's the thing I should do? I should go train. Yeah. Get in a gym, go run, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. What's the thing you don't do when you're most stressed? Yeah. Right? It's the hardest thing to do. So here's me saying, talking about it, but I think it's fundamental. I think, I think Tyson Fury, I just saw him in a video. He was saying the best medicine is exercise. The best medicine.
I know. So there's an example.
Did you ever box?
I did. I boxed at Sandhurst. Yeah. And one of the formative moments of my career. So there was a para named Klukas, who was kind of the only heavyweight. He was close to super heavyweight, huge guy. Right. And I was kind of a heavy middleweight, but so there was nobody as close to him in size.
90 kilos? What were you walking?
86, 88 therein. So, Klukas was 100 and 510, easy. Yeah. But nobody would spar with him for some obvious reasons. So they threw him in the ring, and that's it. And he didn't have my skills. I was moving around.
You that bit quicker?
Getting a little cocky and so on. And he punched at me, and it was a glancing blow across here. And I saw every star in the sky. And just the glove, it was really? More a sting, but. Big guys hit hard. They get your weight behind it. There's no substitute for that. Yeah. And putting yourself at that risk. And my daughter is a kickboxing instructor.
Oh wow!
Yeah, she likes to hit people. Yep. But she also knows how to take a blow, especially which is what you do the most. Yeah. And
I think learning how to be comfortable in confrontation is fundamental. I think we shy away from it now, and we try and teach children to go and tell the teacher. I think again, I've talked about it before on this, but the notion that any of my children should be okay with being pushed around by anybody doesn't sit well with me for a second. I say if somebody touches you and you don't do something back, I'll be really disappointed. Yeah. If you start it, I'll be disappointed. Right. But if you don't, how did your daughter get into kickboxing out of interest? Was it something you just always wanted to?
No, kind of her own volition. So she has a company that does fitness on Providence. So she's a fitness instructor. She got basic things. She runs, she's a personal trainer, and she runs courses twice a day.
Brilliant.
Nice crowd, and so kickboxing was one of the things that came up. She was doing it separately with somebody else, and she and her the girl that she's partners with got to so they went to the States and went to school and learned to be kickboxing instructors, and now she's back, and they bought all the equipment.
There you go.
And
so don't mess with your daughter.
Yeah, that's
the story here.
So and then my boys quite separately box in Hitchin, and that's what they do twice a week as their exercise.
Yeah,
and they pummel each other. And not many other people would get in the ring with them. So
they big boys.
Well, the one is over 6 foot. One is shorter, 5'9", but he's quite stocky. And quite aggressive.
That's half the battle. Yeah, honestly. Half the battle is. You find often in confrontation, half the battle is aggression.
It is.
And
And even just an aggressive stance. You know, if you have a foot forward, people think,
what can you do?
Yeah. I don't know. I think we pay a price for avoiding the physicality of growing up and of confrontation. And yes, part of the price we pay is that it gets to knives and guns and so on very quickly. Yeah. And I don't think anybody has made the link back to that. You know, these guys need to be wrestling in a ring from young.
I mean, we've been for millennia. What have we done as human beings? What have we done? We've wrestled, we've grappled. You know, and that's the basic fundamentals of. Then, I mean, a lot of you think like the Spartans. What do they do with their boys? They teach them wrestling first. You know, they teach them grappling, and then.
But also when you're wrestling within a set of rules or something, but when you face to face, shoulder to shoulder with somebody. I think mutual respect develops between you and that person.
Oh my gosh,
but
doesn't it?
I do think that also a respect for people grow. If you understand their physicality as well as your own.
So and I think I've got I understand young you well now. I do.
Yeah.
So when George Fitch comes along and says, Jamaica should have a bobsled. A bobsled team, and then he speaks to Ken Barnes,
right?
And Ken says, "I've got the man."
Yeah. So he asked Ken Barnes though. So he said he needs some people to bobsleigh. So Ken said, "Well, what kind of people you need?" And I said, "Big, strong, fast." And said, "Yes." And then George said, "We need somebody who is fairly athletic with proven hand-eye coordination, so we can teach them to drive the sled." That's when Ken Barnes said, "Oh, I have the man for you." And that's when the call went out.
So he comes to you. Ken comes to you.
No, Ken calls my commanding officer.
Right. Okay.
Who calls me? I'm at home.
What did you think at that moment in time? So somebody says, "Yeah, not to assume anything, but you knew what bobsledding was. Had you seen it before? Had you?"
I had no idea what it was when they said it to me. No.
So they come to you and they say, "Hey, Tal." You go, "Yeah." They say, "Somebody wants some, athletic people, good hand coordination." You go, "Yeah." And they say, "To drive a bobsled."
Yeah, no, that's the conversation went more like this. So the phone rings, I pick it up, a commanding officer, the other end of the phone. And he said that at the National Stadium on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. are trials for a national team, which will be a bobsleigh team, and we're committing a number of soldiers, and you are to go.
You are to go.
Yeah.
Right. This isn't an ask.
And I said, "Can you tell me what this is about, sir?" And he said, "That's what I know." And the phone hangs up. And this is well pre-internet.
So you can't Google anything.
No.
Like, this isn't any National Geographic.
No, I had to call around. And a friend of mine knew somebody in the States who was able to tell him what it was.
Right.
And then I remember when I was at Sandhurst for a brief moment, a few seconds, in a tea room, anteroom, one weekend, I saw like 30 seconds of a bobsleigh run.
Right.
And I was blown away. I couldn't understand what that was. I said that these people are insane.
Yeah, I mean, you're shooting yourself down an angled tunnel where people have died.
Yes,
people have died. I'm sure you quickly realise that.
The fact hasn't escaped me. No.
Yeah, there's so. I mean, I was trying to not out of morbid curiosity possibly, but obviously because of what ended up happening. I was trying to look into some of the statistics of this, and Wikipedia was only so useful in showing me the number of fatalities as a result of bobsledding, and luge. But it's not insignificant. People have died doing this. So all of a sudden, No,
it's not insignificant. And even more people have been seriously injured. People have been crippled and lots of stuff. No.
I guess you fly helicopters, right? So you're flying helicopters in the army. So there's a real risk with that, fatalities and helicopters.
Certainly in terms of what I was doing.
Exactly. Yes, can and will go hand in hand. So you're not averse to risk, clearly. You're not.
No, but I try to explain to folk that if you want to talk about special forces soldiers or anybody doing something with a high degree of danger in a professional setting, these are not adventurers or gung-ho guys. These are people who are expert at managing risk. So your whole thing is already dangerous.
Yeah, they're not just crazy.
Yeah,
they're
right.
not just crazy. Got it.
So this thing is dangerous. So, and these are the things that we do, and we train for, and we practice. This is how we go about it, because the aim is not to die, right? That's not the aim. And so, in bobsleigh, so just before I came in, and a little bit in my early days, it was a gung-ho sport with a lot of people like that in there.
Right.
We thought they would just throw themselves down the track, but it's really cleaned up, professionalized.
Yeah.
A big part of that was bringing women into the sport. The first Olympics they were in were 2002. But
Why do you think that was?
It because of really objections from men and it's men from certain places. A lot of European nations didn't think women belong in sport. A lot of difficulties were raised as to why it couldn't be done. And so a lot of work went into doing that. Now you have concussion protocols and a host of things that I never saw in my entire career. But people are aware of that now. And
it's the same in rugby, like where it's only in the last 5 to 10 years, really, in NFL, we're taking concussions and head trauma seriously, with tackle heights and things like that, where it takes until, sadly, very, very sadly, until people then are in their 40s, 50s, and
have long-term,
and have long-term.
And a place that we haven't gone, which I personally went to, because, I've been concussed 4 times, which 2 of those times I've been completely unconscious, or just out of it, hospitalized. 4 times that resulted in hospitalization. And my father died of Alzheimer's. And I was always concerned about my brain health. And I did a lot of research on it. And by this time, I have to say, I was very much into the making sure that your body works by giving it the nutrients that it needs to develop. And your brain is another organ in your body.
Absolutely.
Mostly fat. But it's a fantastic organ when it comes to repairing. But you have to give it a chance. So nutrition is key. And so, I think my brain, I haven't done any scans or anything like that, but it is as sharp as ever. In a lot of ways, it's much sharper. But that was a deliberate fix after I stopped, because I didn't appreciate until, maybe 20 years ago, the sort of micro concussions. But when you're in a bobsleigh, you're basically hitting your head the entire time.
90 miles an hour? Is that what we're talking?
On some tracks, yeah.
So it's between 80 and 90?
Between 80 and 90, yeah. There are a few places you get to 100, but not.
The speeds you're going. Talk to me about that then. So as you go, these micro concussions, they're happening because you are.
Yeah, but you remember you're hitting corners, and every corner you hit is a rapid onset of G's.
Yes.
So with the best of wills, you
Are you taught to tense? Were you doing any neck training or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, I did. I was doing a lot of neck training.
You were
before bobsleigh, and then once I got into it, I did quite.
I just spoke to guys in the Williams F1 Academy.
Yeah.
And it's looking like, he F1's looking likely for him. So he's come up all throughout karting, F4, 3, 2, looking like F1. And we talked for quite a while about neck training because of the G's that it puts on, because of the pressure that it puts. And, he's only 19. He proudly was like, look at my neck. Look. And I was like, yeah. But you can see the training. You can see the benefit of. And sports science only progresses. Sports science and nutrition, in particular sports nutrition, only progresses. So it sounds like you're really ahead of your game. Really.
Yeah, we were way ahead. And I'm sure we'll get into that a bit later. But we were way ahead in terms of a coach that we had picked up and some realities around how we train. So we really got into the nutrition game from 92, 93 and built on that.
Wow. That's early when you think about.
Yeah. There are things that I do that are not being done today.
Right.
I'm trying to keep some of that to myself until I exploit it.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of things that people have come on to, and I saw a Canadian bobsledder who trained with the coach who was a Jamaican coach, who was a Canadian back in the time, and I saw him for the first time in 20 years, in 2018. And the first thing he said to me, is that, Sam was way ahead of his time. And I said, no. He said, these guys are just, I went through a number of things. I just started to do it. I said, yeah. And,
fair play.
And it's true. And there's a lot of science coming out now, a lot of guys doing very good work on research and so on. But really just proving what we've been doing for a long time. And there are things that I've learned quite a bit, especially in the last 5 years.
Wow. Okay.
And added into, my personal program and into what I try to work with people with.
Do you train much now? I know we're jumping around, but do you train much now? Do you exercise? Do you weight lift? What do you do?
Yeah, 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. So I train for very short periods at high intensity.
How long are we talking?
30 to 45 minutes maximum. I have my own throwing arrangement, which is not a kettlebell and it's not a bar, but I use bands with free weights to set them up.
Yeah.
And hinge through the hip, throw them as a kind of a basis. But a lot of planking, push-ups, weighted walking.
Yeah.
I spend most
of my calisthenic type training.
Right.
Yeah.
And then fartlek a couple of times a week. And then in fact this morning just went for a nice fartlek around town. It's
fartlek's the one. Correct me. I'm trying to bring my GCSE exactly. Yeah, it's variable speeds. So you could be running 6 kilometers an hour and then got to 15 and then back to 9 and then. But so it's not where some people might think of kind of interval training, where it's like 8 to 16, 8 to 16. This fartlek is continual mix. That's right. I think my PE teacher will be very happy.
Yeah.
Rugby, you do a load of that because it's always variable speeds. Like you don't.
It's like the game.
It's exactly like the game. Right. You train like you play. So did you go? So I mean, you presumably did go because you were told to go on that day. So you go there.
Yeah. So we go. Have you seen Cool Runnings?
Of course.
Yes. All right. So the truest thing in the movie is the scene where everybody gets into this conference room. The lights go down. The projector starts running. Crash after crash after crash. The lights come back on. Only the soldiers are in the room. Everybody else is gone.
Oh my gosh.
And how many soldiers are there? Because we've been told to go.
Yeah, well, you're not leaving the room. No. So how many people were in the room and how many were left in the room?
Between 20 and 30.
Yeah.
You never can be sure because the lights go out and I don't know. Door was always opening. I don't know how many people were coming in and going out, but the net effect.
So how many were left in the room?
Just about 7.
So about a quarter, all army, all military.
All army.
That's wonderful. What were you thinking as you were watching that screen?
You see, I was thinking it was crazy, but no, on reflection, it was deliberate because they only showed crashes. And they showed some of the worst crashes ever. The old Lake Placid track where bobsleighs used to regularly exit the track and into the forest. And, so it was designed to scare people.
Okay, and it did?
Yeah. And
did it scare you?
People who didn't need to be there, people were already scared.
Yeah. So did you show any concern for it? Or were you just like, okay, well, cool, that is what it is?
Yeah, but one of Ken Barnes' things is that this looked like a real army sport. Yeah, soldiers should be doing this.
Okay.
So,
really?
Yeah, that was his thing.
Okay.
He said this, and
so you got 7 of you in the room. How do you then get into? How do you then move forward?
So we then go on. We do 8-point physical test. You jump, you jump long, you jump high. Things you sprint, a couple of sprints, that kind of stuff. I was middle of the pack. I wasn't great, but I was one of the 2 people who they were looking at to drive the sled. So I was kind of.
So it was between you and another guy. Can you remember him?
Yeah, Sammy Clayton. Yeah.
Okay. So Sammy Clayton did end up,
a civilian. Yeah. He was an engineer with the Railway Corporation.
Right.
Yeah, no, Sammy qualified for the Olympic Games and didn't go.
Right.
And then, unfortunately, he died with COVID.
Oh my God.
In early.
Right.
He was living in New York, whereas things are getting pretty sticky. So, and I hadn't seen him in years. But
So you had some time actually early in the army where you went to Canada.
Yeah.
Right. So to Manitoba.
Manitoba.
Because I think there's the joke, Jamaica doesn't see snow, right? Except for the Blue Mountains, possibly once or twice, But you'd seen snow and ice, presumably, going to Manitoba's the snowy area.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Before that, in at Sandhurst,
you'd seen rain.
Oh yeah, we saw lots of rain on the Salisbury Plain and lots of bog. But we did a final exercise in Europe. And, you need to remember, this was, when I went to military school, we were planning to fight the Russians on the northern plains of Europe. And, people assumed that they were going to fight and other people are going to die. And the training was very realistic. And it was the coldest winter, huge snowstorm. And we were out there for like 4 days. And it was the last exercise like that. I didn't learn until I went back to this reunion. They said, no, there was a board and they investigated that and it never happened again. Right. But it was pretty...
Can you remember how cold it got?
I don't know temperature-wise, but it was cold enough. It was freezing. And
I guess, is that the coldest temperatures you'd been in to that point?
Up to that point, yeah.
Yeah.
But then Manitoba, when I arrived in Manitoba in the summer and the parking spaces all had a plug in there. So I was saying, man, this is nice. These guys, leave a place for you to plug in your radio or so on. So I couldn't figure out. Yeah. Come winter, of course, you have to plug in your car. It would never start. Manitoba is one of the most brutal environments, really. I mean, things that happen there. Several times, horseflies kill cows just by biting them to death.
Right.
And we had mosquito swarms that like a cloud in the sky, tremendously hot in the summer.
Yeah.
And freezing cold.
So you'd seen
in
it
the
all.
winter, yeah. So that really, and then it was flight training, so you have to go flying and all this kind of weather and so on.
And it's bloody cold up there, right? So
yes, and then you get off the ground. So that. Yeah, by the time I got to bobsleigh, I'd seen some cold.
So you weren't put off by, I guess you couldn't be put off by the potential danger.
No, but also, as you said, if you've been involved very physically throughout life and you've been hurt and you feel pain, I find you're less likely, I also find this in myself, I've seen it in my children and so on, you're less likely to shy away. If you know that, you're going to be hit and it's going to hurt, but we can't deal with that. And you do it. The thing is, if you've never been hurt, bobsleigh is not the place to start because it beats you up.
That's the thing, because it looks, when it's done well, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The lines are stunning.
Like anything else.
Any
game well played.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's something just, I think, again, you had a quote about gravity, in fact, that springs to mind, where you said, you said you think it's a beautiful sport, a gravity sport, and you said you think it's the most beautiful sport in the world when it's done well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where you're looking at that video and then you're speaking, you're finding out from other people around it that actually, that's the worst of it. The best of it, that's a challenge that you want to take on.
Exactly.
So how soon or how long from the 8-point test, from being in that conference room, watching that screen, to having the test, were you then, at a with a bobsled?
That was in late August. We went through September doing some training in Jamaica, just physical training. And then we traveled in the second week of October to Calgary.
So I was a week old.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was a week old. So
I think we landed October 19.
October the 6th. So
Is
I
that
was,
right?
October 6th. So I was 13 days old. I wasn't even 2 weeks old. So, so that's October 19th, and the team's put together. Who's part of that team at that point?
So there was Devon Harris, who was another army officer. He was in the infantry. Mikey White he was a 100-meter champion from the army. And
That's it, 100-meter Jamaican champion.
no, the army champion.
Oh, yeah, Jamaican army
Jamaican
champion.
army champion, yeah.
Do you know what he ran? At what speed he ran?
He
Or what time?
ran in the mid 10, 6, something like that. He wasn't,
Right.
from a Jamaican context, that fast.
Yeah.
But he had very good early acceleration, which is really
Exactly what you need.
in bobsleigh. Yeah. Who are the other guys? There's another soldier and then a civilian named Caswell Allen, who was not in. I'm not sure how Caswell got on the team, but he was not in the projector in the room when all that stuff was shown.
So I've got
And Sammy Clayton.
photo
Sorry.
there.
Right. So it's Mikey White, Devon Harris. This is Freddie Powell. Now, Freddie turned up halfway through the trials on an S90 motorbike
Oh, cool.
in his going out shoes. And George said, we have to have him. So Freddie was the front guy.
Yeah.
Freddie got in a bobsleigh the whole time once. I was not amused. So these are the three army guys plus Freddie. But Sammy Clayton would have been the fourth guy there.
Right. Okay. So in October,
Yeah.
that's you training. And wait, you're on an ice rink? Is that?
No, sorry. I should say in September we went to Lake Placid to meet the coach.
Right.
So the Lake Placid track didn't have ice; it wasn't ready to be slid on. So we saw the coach. We talked some theory. He plied us with beer and then beef to assess, what kind of people we were.
Right.
And then he passed us, and then we went down to the hockey rink where the US team had won goal in 1980, beating the Russian team in the rink, which is, I don't think it's happened since. Certainly didn't happen before that. And then, so we went onto the rink with they had a bobsleigh sort of start area set up, and we went and we tried to push the sled on ice. So that sled that you see in the picture is what we were using in Jamaica on the concrete.
Yes.
Kind of, sort of to get the timing and the positioning and so on. So now the first time we had a real bobsleigh on the ice, but the ice is very slippery. I don't know if you know. And so we're all over the place.
Yeah. What was George's relationship to you? Did you meet him at that early point? So George and was it William Maloney?
William, yeah.
So George and William were the ones that said, we should bring a Jamaican bobsled team to.
So I first met them at the trials in Jamaica.
Right. Okay. And their idea was effectively they've watched Pushcart. They'd seen that, which is part of the film, right? Pushcart's part of the film. Yeah. So they'd seen that and they thought, okay, well, Jamaican athletes, got some really quick Jamaican athletes, got some really powerful ones. So, this will translate well to bobsled. And that was their thinking. Yeah. Right. Did you meet William?
Good friend to this day. Yeah.
To this day? Fantastic. Yeah. So what was your first impression of the two of them?
William remains very friendly, outgoing guy. Irish American. Always has a quip and, easy to talk to. Yeah. George, far more reserved, critical, right? Kind of everything.
Who of the two was driving it mostly, or was it a joint thing, do you think?
These guys had different motivations. Okay. So William is a very laid back guy.
Right.
And he just wanted to march in the opening ceremonies of an Olympic Games. And just the bucket list.
Yeah.
There's no real reason. So he actually played lawn tennis to a very, very high level in college in America. Right. So, he was an athlete and so on. But William, very, very relaxed. George, commercial attaché, US Embassy. I didn't know it at the time, but he was going through transition, leaving the service, different things. So he was looking for things to do.
Right, okay.
And George wanted to do a movie. That was it. He had a commercial operation
so do you
from
think
the beginning.
From the very beginning of this, he was thinking, there's not a Jamaican bobsled team. There's a contrast. There is a contradiction in, a country that doesn't see a drop of snow to, competing in a winter sport. And he saw a movie in that from the off.
He saw the elements for a good movie.
Really?
Yeah, and he was shopping it around from day one.
Did you know that at the time?
No.
When did you find that out?
After the games, like I said, William and I became really good friends, and then George as a consequence. So we spent a lot of time after the first games. And it was in that I really got into the internal workings of why there was a Jamaica bobsleigh team, which had nothing to do with anything anybody had been told. But you know, for me, I had never seen people imagine something, envision it, and then bring it into reality. And how you do that. So that was a real education for me.
I mean, it shows a strength of character and a will.
Yeah.
And like, how old were they? Were they similar ages?
No, I was younger. So
you were in your 20s, right? So
I was in my 20s. So William was 4 years older than myself, and then George was another 15 years older than William. So George was middle age. I think George was in his mid-50s. He was at the time where if he stayed in the service, then is a career. He'd be going to 65. But if he got out early, he would still have some oomph to do something else, and that's what he did. But this was his
passion project. Like, he's like, I'm going to make this happen.
Yeah, well, his next posting was to Paris.
Right.
And his wife was quite looking forward to that. And then he came up with this whole idea. And so they back and forth and so on. And finally she said, all right, do it. And so on. And he said, all right. So he went and incorporated a company to run the whole thing. And he called it IOP Associates. I said, George, what is IOP? He said, instead of Paris.
Fair enough.
So these are the people that you're dealing with.
Yeah, okay. I'm getting a good measure.
Yeah.
Did you like them from the first time you met them?
No, not from the first time. I like William, and we got on well, and then we've done businesses together and different things.
Yeah. So over time,
but William really insisted that I get to know George as George and understand him.
And do you feel like you did get to understand him?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Massive respect. George, died in I think 2014.
Yeah.
So, but he was a real operator. I mean,
he can make stuff
real
happen.
Real operator.
So, because here you are in Calgary then.
Yeah.
I said to my partner before I came, I said, I actually feel like the true story is way more interesting than the fictional, the narrative from the film. Right. I think, on one of the days of racing, you broke a collarbone.
Yeah.
That's not in the film.
No.
And then, that was the day, was that the day of the crash?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that
this was actually minutes before the crash.
So, did you know that you'd fractured it at the time?
Yeah, I was told when I got to the top.
Right.
So there was a physio. Of course, we couldn't afford physios for ourselves. But the British physio actually was a West Indian.
Right.
But he took one look at it and said, well, this is broken. Which I suspected because I'd broken this collarbone before playing football.
Right.
And so green stick fracture, but nevertheless, quite painful. They had you remember the magic spray from the old days in football? Yeah,
of course. It's just water,
just
magic sponge.
Yeah.
They call it the magic sponge. Yeah, you're fine. Get up.
Can you imagine that? No, so, it would never happen. Yeah.
Well, not football nowadays.
No.
So, you fell on the ice, right? You
fell on the ice.
Yeah. So you fell on it. So you've broken your collarbone. I mean, there's been this whole difficult kind of process to get to this point, even, and then on the morning of this happens, and I mean, your coach had left.
Yeah. Well, part of the reason I fell is that I had a very high fever,
right,
and I was sick and sort of dizzy even, and then I slipped and fell, broke the collarbone, got the ice sponge.
Did you tell anybody that you were sick?
No.
You didn't? You kept that to yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a real theme here, Tal.
Nobody needed to know that. I mean, what were we going to do?
Yeah, I guess that's it. You're there. I mean, you're there via some hardship as well, in the sense of you were there to race two-man teams.
Right.
Then you went down to 3 men.
Right.
So who were the four, and then Sammy
So Sammy Clayton left.
Clayton left, right?
So he left Devon Harris, Mikey White, and myself. Sammy and Devon were a team.
Yeah.
Devon came to me and said that, we don't have, with the two-man, only two people can compete at the Olympics. And by this time, we had been in a struggle together, battling.
Yeah. And you've been staying in the same bedroom with one bed.
Same bedroom, right.
And I mean, there's not a load of money being spent on you guys.
No.
And is it true that you sold T-shirts to make money?
Yeah, to buy food.
Yeah, really.
You could tell the quality of your supper by how the T-shirt sales were going.
Where were you selling?
PM. This was in Austria, in Eagles, Austria.
Right.
So we sold mostly to club sliders from clubs and so on, and other international teams came in.
Right.
And then, we had some publicity going. So people, they sold well.
Was there some excitement, would you say? Like, did you feel the excitement of the Jamaican bobsled team making a debut at the Calgary Olympics?
No, I had a real blind spot. I had no understanding of that.
Right.
I didn't know anything about marketing, nothing about hype, and it doesn't come naturally to me. And I was trying to keep as low a profile as I could get. So I didn't really understand what it was about. I didn't understand why anybody would be excited about it. We haven't even done anything yet.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how ridiculous it was to start bobsledding in October of 1987 and racing the Olympics in February of 1988. I saw guys who said, we've gotten to the Olympics, we've been at this 16 years.
Just 16 weeks.
Years, yeah. Put things in a little perspective for you. So I didn't know like any of these things. I just saw, we have a task here. We're going to have to, do the best that we can with what we have, try and maximize our resources. So, but Devon said if we had a foreman, then, we all could compete. So he arranged to get another athlete, Caswell Allen, to come. I told him that, talk to George. If you can convince George, I'm prepared to learn to drive the foreman. Try it. Let's see.
This is January. Serves in January.
Yeah.
And you were competing in February.
Yeah, so we were in...
So we're talking
literally
weeks.
3 weeks,
weeks
before the game started.
Weeks before the game start, and you as a four-man team take to the ice
for the first time.
For the first time, you're told, okay, well now you've gone from 2-2s to a 4.
Yeah.
So, I guess
so. It was an impossible situation. But George said, yes, let's try. But we had a route to qualify in the two-man. We had followed that route. It's kind of a made-up route. Every time you did something else came up.
Okay.
But we went through it, and we qualified. And we're two-man teams. Never been in a four-man and so. So I thought to myself, there's no way that we could race a four-man in the Olympics, given the fact that we've never raced a four-man anywhere, anytime in the history of the sport. George said, try it, and he did a number of things. So he got us a four-man sled at the Olympics. Off the Canadians one, they forgot they had. And anyway, so
they just had one knocking around.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
that's kind of them. or it's George making it happen.
George, yeah. So he did that. Then Caswell Allen, and there are a number of things around this story. So he was hurt. Now, whether he was actually hurt or he was just not amused at his first training day. But first day on the ice, he came back and he said, he couldn't go. He's hurt and so on.
What did he hurt?
It was his wrist at some point.
Okay.
Anyway, I didn't really follow it closely, but my brother was at school in Moscow, Idaho, which is 8 hours from Calgary driving. And he had driven up to watch and was standing around while we were practicing the push. And then Caswell was gone. And so now we don't have a four-man team anymore.
For the second time?
For the second time. And Howard Seiler, our coach, says, I introduced him. I said, this is my brother, Howard. He's a sprinter. He's been...
You said Chris is pretty fast, right?
Yeah, he was in the top 10 of the 100 meters for a number of years.
Wow.
And this was one of them. And Howard said, well, why isn't he on the sled? And then George Fitch was there and said, yeah, why isn't he on the sled?
How did he feel about this? Does he just sit there with a bag of crisps thinking, what? Why?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, he was probably not keen on disappointing me.
Yeah,
You
of
can
course.
think of the dynamics.
Of
right at that time.
course. Yeah.
So this is about 3 PM, and by 6, Chris has accreditation, which was closed on the 31st of December, 1987.
Right. So
But he has accreditation.
here we are,
and he's
4
in
weeks
the Olympic
later.
Village, yes. And we're not yet in the race, but we're in the training.
Yeah.
So our deal was that complete the training and you can race. So we completed the training, we got the descents, and then we raced Saturday and we crashed Sunday morning.
So the race on Saturday, was that a qualifying race? What was
No. So it's 2 days, 4 heats, 2 heats first day, 2 heets the second.
Yeah.
So the first day was a bit of a circus, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
On the second day, the day we crashed, we actually had the 7th fastest start. And it was a real gung-ho moment. A friend of mine who knew us, well, he was in the army. He knew all the soldiers, everybody involved. And he had left the army and he was working on an oil rig, flying helicopters in the Gulf. And so they were all, together watching these games. So, Sunday morning he came in and he said, well, we have to see this, find the Olympics format because, I know these guys and it's glory or death. So it was almost death from it. But that kind of was the spirit that we had as well.
Did you have, and again, there's a handful of things to speak to around the film, the feel the rhythm, feel the rhyme, get on up, it's bobsled time. Did you have any kind of ritual, anything you'd do or say as a team? Like, what was your version of that?
Not
if
really
any?
that involved.
Yeah, because you got the Germans shouting "Ein, zwei, drei" and all that in the film, right? So,
yeah,
what's
the film was clever in places if you know what to look for, what you see. So one of the things that Third Eye was big on when I was talking to the producer and so on is a huge challenge that we had and we had right through my entire career was the culture. The bobsled didn't have a culture and you don't have an option to change that culture, right?
Right.
That's how things are. But you certainly have to adapt the culture in places.
right?
But there are certain things that are not negotiable. So it's in figuring out what parts of this culture are not negotiable and how we're going to do it and how we're going to. So that was encapsulated in that whole concept of that the Germans said, Ein, zwei, drei, and then we tried Ein, zwei, drei, and it was chaos. The thing is that you need a rhythm at the start. That's how the thing works. And so, whereas how you set the rhythm can change in the execution, the fact that you need a rhythm is a fact of life. Yeah, right? Can't change. And I think that's what it captured very cleverly and without really saying that much. But that's what we tried all the German ways. Mm-hmm. And the guys just couldn't get into it. Worse. You have Chris now on the sled, brand spanking new. Yeah.
I wonder how he's feeling about all of this.
Right, yeah.
He's like, how did this end? How did this happen to me? Yeah. Basically, my brother's been pulled into this, and now I am.
Yeah. No, it's one of those things that will never happen again.
It's quite a lovely. Do you look back on that fondly in terms of your relationship with Chris? You're enjoying that together, or going through that together.
Yeah, those are the best times.
Adversity is and facing up to challenges and then doing that with your brother beside you.
Right. Yeah. Well, he went through a fair amount of tough times himself, getting even to that point. But
you did.
Yeah. Just in schooling and
Washington's a way away from Jamaica.
Right. So he did school in New York, and then transferred to Washington. All his education was on track scholarships.
Right.
And then, which is a brutal existence after people don't realize that people give you a scholarship, you're there to run and never mind.
Yeah. Anything else.
Yeah.
You're not here for the school experience. You're here
No. You're here.
You're a student athlete.
Yeah. Mind not your hamstring hurting, the meat coming up.
Yeah.
And you're there to put down some strides and turn some dollars. That's
Yeah,
it.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
Did he continue with his sprinting kind of career, I guess, around or after the Calgary Olympics?
No, he kind of switched completely to bobsleigh. I think his final effort was to get to the 88 games, but that didn't work out. Which is, these are not simple matters in Jamaica. It's not easy at all. So, but then, well, yeah, it was just focus on bob after that.
Yeah. So was he there or thereabouts, do you think? Like, in terms of like how many of the Jamaican sprinters then get picked for the squad that then go ahead to the Olympics?
6 in '84. He was not selected on a photo finish, which was very controversial.
Right.
And then in '88, I can't quite remember what the issues were. But it's basically 6 people. And a number of them double up as 200-meter runners.
Of course.
So if you're just a straight 400-meter runner, you have to be really good. And then, it's not easy. It's I mean, literally, it's a guaranteed medal. So if you met the Jamaican team,
I mean, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Like, you're telling no lies.
Yeah. So it's the toughest race. It's tougher than the Olympics.
There's a huge amount of pressure on him as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something quite beautiful then in the fact that he then was stood beside you, pushing that bobsled, at the start of that race.
Yeah, but in life, you get so many things happen.
It's not a straight line.
No, it isn't. But also that are opportunities. But if you're not prepared generally, so if you haven't prepared yourself to live your life as hard as you can and looking for it, they pass you by. Because it very easily couldn't have been there. It was a massive opportunity.
Yeah.
And, here, 30 plus years later, you and I are sitting down talking about it.
Yeah.
It's just, it could so easily have been missed, yet it was such a thing. And I think that this happens. It certainly happened in my life.
Well, I mean, you didn't choose this.
No.
I think that's, important to say is lots of people, and certainly lots of people that I speak to on this, point in a direction of success in a chosen field and really run at it. I mean, I guess I'm doing this with the interviewing, right? I'm saying, okay, this is something I'm choosing to do. I want to run at this and be the best I can be at this. And I want this to be the best product. It can be about, people to really enjoy this. You were told to be there.
Right.
And chosen for that as a result of your attributes, and you've proven yourself.
And this is the key, as a result of your attributes, as a result of things that you're doing. So there's no way I could have conceived bobsleigh when I was sprinting in front of my house every morning, and my mother lives opposite me. Our newlywed wife is here, and at 6 o'clock, I'm doing 10 hard sprints and so on before going to work. And when the bobsleigh started, my mom said, "Well, I'm happy you found a sport to fit your training."
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And that's kind of what they're driving at. So they're we haven't gotten into your life, but I'm sure if you look back, that coming to this point and having this passion didn't.
I could walk you all the way through it. I promise you. I've thought about it enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could walk you all the way through.
It is opportunity meets preparation.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And then boom, this is it.
Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes you have to make those opportunities, you made the best of the opportunities chosen for you is the thing.
It's very hard. Yeah. You have to learn to recognize things for what they are.
As an aside, were there other non-white athletes in the Calgary Olympics? Did you see many?
Half the British team was West Indian.
Okay.
Jamaican mostly. I mean, one that wasn't a Jamaican, including a white Jamaican, whose family I knew. So they were there. A lot of the American team were Black Americans. Billy Galt, who was a famous wide receiver, he was on the team.
He was pulled into the team. How brilliant!
Yeah. It was the first time I saw a cell phone in my life. It was Willie Galt in the dining room.
Was it like that though?
It was, it was a brick, but still.
It's a brick. It's
somebody on a phone with no wires.
Yeah. So I guess, because the film does play up the racial tension a tiny bit, the racial disparity. But you're saying actually there were other black guys there, competing in the Winter Olympics. It was, and not even just in the Winter Olympics, but in bobsled. It wasn't like you four were the only black guys competing.
No, we were not by a long way. There were a number around, Canadians as well. Had after kind of the Anglo-Saxon diaspora, black athletes coming out there. I think this French figure skater, I think that was her first games. There's a black girl who did figure skating for France.
Right.
And I was shocked at the opening ceremony. I was kind of in the athletes lineup and I saw her, and I mean, no idea how tiny these
tiny little things. Yeah.
But you see her on TV and she's built.
But she's really super compact. Yeah.
And that was eye opening. But we were not a novelty, except for the fact that we were from the Caribbean and we hadn't been in our bobsleigh race.
Yeah. So on the day that you crashed, do you remember how you felt? You're stood beside the bobsled. Nobody else knows that you're hurt, possibly, or do they? Do your teammates know?
No.
Right.
No, this is the physio and me now.
Just the physio and you, and you're like, you tell on no one.
No.
So,
and because we didn't have much time, we were early off. So, and
remember what time of the day it was?
10 o'clock. So I think the race started at 9, maybe half.
So there's already a crowd though.
People, there's a crowd and cowbells and lots of stuff going on.
Yeah.
So all of that, I was. It might sound strange, but my head was beginning to clear. The pain was, being dulled.
Presumably, you got a lot of kind of adrenaline, starting to kick in because you're about to compete.
Right. You need to control that.
Yeah.
And get to the right tension and bring things. I was working on all of that mentally, and George said to me, and I was looking around for Howard Silo. And then George was at the start. He came over. I said, well, Howard left. I said, what do you mean left? He said, well, he had work and he flew out this morning. He just called me from
being
the airport.
Being the coach.
Yeah.
So on the day of the race, broke your collarbone and your coach leaves.
That was the hardest part, especially given the time between hearing that news and then having to go. That was
and he didn't think to speak to you all?
No, well, he didn't say anything to us. I
would have been probably quite angry.
At the end of the morning, I was really angry with myself.
Right.
And a very hard and important lesson in life, but never again would I invest my personal situation with any human being. That's what I took away from that.
Why?
Because they're going to let you down. You have to draw your strength from yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's in time anybody will disappoint you, I think, but certainly in athletic performance and so on, you need to draw your strength from within. And it's tough for me. I mean, I watch athletes all the time. I watch footballers, and you see a lot of people who cannot create and maintain their own peak performance state, regardless of what is going on around them. They're lifted by the crowd, and you have all of these things. I know these things exist and it happens, but you need to teach people how to create their own, the peak performance state of mind, regardless of the external environment, and execute. And I did not do that because my confidence was in another man.
Did you ever talk to him about that?
We never spoke again.
You never spoke again?
Never.
Is that something you regret?
I admit I've never thought about that. And I didn't understand why he would do something like that. But that, is what it is. He went. And he was no longer involved with the team afterwards, so I didn't have to confront that.
How did your teammates feel about it?
Not as... they were not as upset as I was eventually, and because they just were not as involved
Yeah, I understand.
with Howard.
Yeah.
You know, he was much more. I mean,
Because presumably you're working day in, day out
day in,
together.
day out,
Day
one
in,
on
day out.
one, all the time. Yeah. The feeling in the moment was confusion.
Yeah.
Right. Disorientation, head swimming, all sorts of things.
George told you before the race that Howard had gone.
Yeah, the sled was on the ice. That's the start block. I'm standing here. The guys before us had just gone on. We moved the sled on the ice. I'm standing, taking off my outer shell, and actually looking for Howard because he always was at the start and talking to me right at that moment. And George came over and said Howard left. And so I had 30 seconds between then and the front bar.
Right. Do you think that you might have felt differently? Not that the race necessarily would have gone any differently, but do you think that he made a mistake in telling you then, 30 seconds before you're racing?
What I think happened is that George saw me looking around for Howard and thought it was
to reassure
better
you.
to tell me what was going on rather than to leave me there to wonder what's happening. And he thought he was focusing on my mind. But I don't think, George never played sport to really any level. I don't think he was thinking that it would be an issue.
Everything impacts your performance.
Yeah. I think he was just saying, stop looking around. Howard isn't here. Get your head down the track. So
Right.
I thought,
whereas somebody maybe with a bit more sporting experience would have thought, okay, athletes with it's a precarious balance between executing and not. So
no, I know somebody with athletic experience who, if they got that call at the time, would have
possibly wouldn't have said the same thing.
They would have probably phoned me before and sat down and had a conversation and put it together, but definitely not at that. In that window.
Did you have the chance to speak to Howard at any point? Like, could you have?
I don't think so. I mean, I guess I could have tried to find out to talk. I made no effort.
Or phoned or...
I made no effort.
You didn't want to?
No.
I know that you've been in the army. I know that you've done these things, I know. But I think male role models, especially, I think... we seek them out. I heard once, and I love this. You have two dads. You have the dad that brings you up, whether they bring you up well or not, and then somebody else comes into your life at some stage,
right?
And it's going to be an older male, for first man, and it's going to be an older male role model, and you'll apprentice yourself to them for a period of time.
Yeah,
I've heard this.
Yeah,
and then the more people I speak to, the more they say, "Oh, I see something in that." Do you think that Howard was that person for you?
No, he would have been in the sport of bobsleigh. So you have to understand.
That's what specifically in that sense. Yeah, I don't mean in life. I mean,
this is the person who first put me on a bobsleigh track. Who followed me. I mean, we've been through everything, tense moments, up and down. We had shouted matches, whatever, hugged and made up, and so it just, it's the kind of thing where they thought he would have. Maybe he tried to talk to me directly. I don't know. It would have been hard to get, even before I was traveling and moving. But I don't know.
I feel like.
But how sudden could it be? You book a flight now. You have a deposit. You don't roll up to the airport.
It's not an accident. You don't roll out of bed into a plane.
Oh, we'll leave it. Yeah, no.
So do you think what would you have said to him had you spoken to him?
I think I would have understood.
Yeah.
If he said he had commitments and so on and he had to get back, or he had movement, I think I would have understood that and processed it in a different environment.
I guess I don't want to labour the point too much about Howard, but it seems like again that's something that the film doesn't capture.
Yeah, no,
and that's all the more interesting to me than like than so many of the things that do happen in the film. I mean, you said that it wasn't a happy time, that there wasn't kind of laughing and joking. Obviously, the film, it's Sanka's there to be the comic respite.
Yeah, right. Well,
there weren't any eggs, were there? Did anybody have a lucky egg?
No, we had Freddie Powell who was singing. He had a rendition of the Whiter Shade of Grey.
Any good?
She delivered that. Well, he knew all the words.
Do you know what that is like? That's like something Simon Cowell would say. It's like, well, you knew the words. Okay.
Is that right? Yeah.
So Freddie would sing.
Freddie would sing and joke around and
Okay.
he would actually soak up a lot of the pressure in terms of fans coming
I think
around.
you need
and so
those
on.
people. You see it in
actually.
any sport, in football and rugby, and in athletics. You see, you need those people. In tennis, you've got a couple, just people that just loosen the pressure valve a little bit, and bring the fans closer to the sport as a result.
Yes,
you need competitors, and I feel like that's maybe the role you is like. I'm here to keep us, again, to your point earlier on, concentrated on the goal at hand, which is to be the best we can be.
Right.
Did you ever think you could win?
No, certainly not.
Not in '88.
Not in '88. I am looking back. I think I ought to have been able to medal. I think people that I was at least comparative with, if not better than, won medals in Olympic competition. But then there is so much more around that I could not adequately influence. And I've made mistakes and so on along the way, personally. But winning, no, definitely not in '88.
Not in '88. So,
getting that sled down the hill was problem enough, that people seem to. So even, with the best of wheels, as the guy responsible in the front to drive this thing down, that was tremendous pressure.
Did you felt the pressure?
Yeah.
So, can you remember in the entirety of the race?
Yeah. Inch by inch.
Inch by inch. Wow.
Yeah.
Really? Because you've got to learn the track as well as best you can as a driver, right? So.
Oh yeah.
So, it was turn 9, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's Chrysler, so it's 270 degrees.
Yeah.
But the problem started long before that in terms of getting behind the sled. So first there was the start and the velocity at the start. Yeah. The faster you go at the start is
And
you get up to speed much quicker, and then the curves are different, and I had no experience of that.
Right.
And then you start missing the points to turn and so on. And then from the day before, when we had reviewed in the evening the video tape, and I saw that Devon Harris, who was number 2 to me, kept looking out over my shoulder. Right. So I told him that's no good for balance.
You've got to keep your heads aligned.
Yeah. So on this time when he got in, he got down, but he put his helmet right here and kind of pushed me right forward onto the cone. And again, these are things that come from practice and training and so on. So I had all of that going on, and I was getting just later and later and later on the steering. And then in the Chrysler, miss the specific points that you need to the steering to control the pressure that comes on the sled. And so I missed those, throw the sled up, but I am steering. So I come on the steering late, where then the sled goes down. And so off the steering, but then you hit the pressure again and it goes up. And so porpoising through the curve, going up at the end of the curve when it finishes, and then over.
Right.
Yeah, the first thing you say, oh no, not in the Olympic Games with all these people watching, and then boom, helmet hit the side. And
do you remember that?
Yeah, stars, black. And then I came back.
Immediately stars and black, so as in
when that helmet hit the side, in some ways that's the worst hit I've ever taken.
I've watched a crash. A few times. I'm sure. Have you ever seen it? Have you watched it back?
Yeah, it looks a lot worse than it. I do a presentation where I play it, but I actually watch the audience, and I know exactly where my head hits the ice.
You can. Ooh.
Yeah, people bury their heads.
So how were the other guys? Did they?
They were they were getting low. Yeah, because they were already down, and then they were getting low, and then I couldn't get under the sled. So the drill is I'm supposed to, hold tight to the D-rings, free my feet from the foot pegs, lean back and duck under and go all the way in the cowl. And then that leaves all the room behind for the rest of the guys to get flat. But because I was pending, we had the wrong helmets. We had motocross helmets. I had a snout. To get the snout past the lip was proven to be a problem. Devil was on top of me. My spikes were stuck in the foot pegs. I couldn't get them out. And before I knew it, we were on another corner, and then when you fall off the corner, it's right on your head again. Boom. about 7 times I hit my head in that one crash.
Was that one of the concussions that you
No,
had? No.
no. The afterwards, the medic said, "Oh, well, it looks like you've broken your collarbone."
You're like, yeah, this morning. Do you think the race would have been different had you not broken your collarbone?
It's hard to say. It didn't help.
Yeah.
All right? It was not a help.
I know it's not,
but it was not a factor, I don't think.
It's just you missed the point of the turn.
Yeah, it's more the speed. I don't know if I thought my head was together, but I don't. The most devastating thing was the news about Hartside.
Yeah.
That was far and away the most devastating.
You can deal with pain. You've said it multiple times.
Yeah.
You can deal with pain. It's not the thing.
Being if you have a fever, you're just not on it. And
of course, you had a fever as well.
Right, yeah.
Let's not forget. You had a fever, broken collarbone. You'd heard about Howard. So...
And then, you have a start of that kind of velocity and things. So it was a bad situation. I don't know that anything would have.
Do you remember then standing up? And now, in the film, of course, they pick the bobsled up and they carry it on their shoulders to the end to rapturous applause and support. And now you're so welcomed into
340 kilos is not.
That's the thing, right? I worked it out. It was like 660 pounds or something.
Yeah.
Like that. So it's like 80 something kilograms. At that point, you're not hoiking that up.
No.
So do you remember that walk? How far was that walk to the end?
Well, it's a full breaking stretch. So that couple 100 meters maybe.
I mean, that's on ice as well.
On ice, spikes, but in the spikes. Yeah. No, and the breaking stretch is full of snow to help slow the sled down. So it's not as slippery as the start or the rest of the track.
Right.
But I'll tell you, after about 10 seconds of crashing, and I realized I wasn't going to do anything, I relaxed.
Yeah.
Which was a thing, and then started bobbing about. And then I thought to myself, how am I here?
How do you mean that? How are you here? How did I get into this?
How did I get into this position? I said, this cannot be right.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this can't be the end of the story. Tal Stokes and Bobsley, and this is how it ends. It cannot be. And I planned the next 4 years to the next Olympic Games in the rest of that crash.
Really?
So what really happened, if you look at on the tape, you see my brother and I right at the very back. And that's when I was explaining to him the plans. And when we got into the ambulance and so on. And I told him, we need to work out how you can be a part of this team, despite his studies and so on. And that was it. But the whole thing was set up there 6 years later in Lillehammer, right in that crash. Which again, goes back to opportunity. Yeah. Who would have guessed?
Who would have guessed? You then went on to the next games. Was it in Lillehammer that you finished?
Lillehammer, yeah.
You finished, was it 14th?
14th overall. 10th on 2 of the 4 runs.
That's right. So you're competing. You're really, you're competitive now.
Yeah.
That was in 94.
Yeah.
The film came out in 93.
Yeah.
Now, I've read that you said that you hated cool runnings.
Yeah.
That you'd gone from, in real life, you'd gone from comedians to competitors.
Right.
By that point, certainly by 94.
We knew we were.
You were well on your way to being competitive.
Yeah.
And you said that the film froze you in time as comedians, almost in this sense. Do you still hate it?
No. My relationship has changed over time. What I can say is that shortly after seeing it and hating it, and the head of Red Stripe Beer, who worked for Diageo, that owned Red Stripe, came up to me after the premiere as I was feeling slighted and said, brilliant, how much do you need to go to the Olympic Games? And I said, $60,000. And he said, come by my office tomorrow for a check. And I thought, man, I should have asked for 100.
Yeah, definitely. Was that him say how much you think we need?
Yeah, exactly. So
how much you got?
But the film did that. It was a dying concept, and it really kickstarted the whole concept of Jamaican Bobsleigh.
Yeah.
again, and people got excited. And that allowed us to carry on.
The film, do you have mixed emotions about it now, or do you feel?
No, my children sort of, I had a copy of the film in my house, and not exactly hidden, but not prominent.
Right.
And one day my children found it and watched it. And when I came home, they said, "Daddy, that is you." And then I watched it again.
I guess he's a mix of you and Chris, right?
Yeah,
he's a track
the
star,
character,
but he's the character.
Right. So my children, I saw what it did for children.
Yeah.
And then as we go along, it's remarkable that with all the changes in norms, it's still a film you can show your children.
Absolutely.
Today.
No, it really is. I mean, it's a favorite of many people.
Yeah.
Right? I think, it's warm and it's charming and it's, it has hope and it has adversity and it has all the right things. When you crashed, do you think George just thought this is perfect?
No, and I know he didn't, because my wife Denise was actually at that race.
Right.
The only Olympic Games that she has come to.
Yeah.
And so she was at the start with George and another gentleman named Pat Brown, who was assisting Howard Siler, so they were there. And then, so my wife, of course, is looking at the clock and saying, "Boy, he's having a bad run. It's going to be disappointed."
Yeah.
So Pat comes and says, "Oh, he's crashed, let's go down." And George is in a complete panic because he thought that he was toast. People thought that we were dead. Maybe 1, 2, this, that. Yeah.
The thing is, you don't know, you wouldn't, how are you to know?
Exactly. And then, of course,
you could have died, Tom. You could have.
Easy. Yeah. And when we came out of the sled, of course, they were driving down the hill, so they weren't seeing the monitors or anything.
Yeah.
So when they got to the bottom, they were looking for blood and gore.
Jeez.
And George was in a complete panic.
Okay.
But
he quickly came to.
There was very little chance of a movie until the crash.
It's true.
After that crash, the movie was certain. Right? So, and
did he write the script?
A guy named Michael Ritchie wrote the original script.
Right.
So George's favorite movie was Downhill Skier, which is a 1967 movie with Robert Redford about an Olympic skier. Yeah, it was a big movie, but Michael Ritchie wrote that. I think he directed it. But anyway, he was the guy that George went to, kind of, and he did very cleverly, wrote up a script, interviewed us for hours and hours, wrote something up, and then sold it to Disney.
Did you get to see the script before Disney saw it?
No.
When was the first time you knew that the film didn't really track, other than the fact that it's a Jamaican bobsled team and there are 4 guys in a bobsled?
I had no idea what the end product was till I actually saw the film.
Okay.
So I didn't see the script, nothing in any detail, certainly not after Disney got hold of it.
Right.
So I didn't know what they were doing, what angle they were taking, what was going on.
So you're sat there at the premiere, the cast are there, John Candy's there, the guys that,
Well, John Candy wasn't actually there, but the rest of the cast.
Oh, he wasn't?
No.
Oh, that's a shame.
I wonder. That was his last film.
It was his last
film. He
film.
died shortly afterwards, and I think he died before it was released.
Oh, really? Because I saw that he did a couple of things, like a couple of TV things maybe afterwards, but I think it was his last film, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think he was in Mexico filming something, and he had a heart attack. But
what a loss. What an incredible loss, for mom and
it was the best part of the film, actually. He had a tremendous body of work, and I enjoy to this day watching him, except in Cool Runnings. But
except in Cool Runnings. Oh gosh! So, did you speak to the cast afterwards? How were you feeling? Because
they were all pretty cool.
Any of the cast members jump out?
Malik Yoba came to dinner at our house. Was very cool. Had a very good chat.
Yeah.
By that time, I had I had one child, yeah, Christian. So he met the firstborn and so on. You know, I learned now that they had specific instructions and how to speak and
How to speak.
accents.
Oh, really?
Yes, because there was a struggle with, you know, should they have a Jamaican accent or should they be understandable?
Right.
And the story is that Turtle Taub, who was the director, came in one day and said to them, I'm begging you guys, please. So this was his first movie as director, Turtle Taub. Young guy, he was 29.
Right.
And, you know, this Cool Runnings was like the one thing the movie shares with the whole Jamaica bobsleigh experience has always been on the edge. And it was in the basement at Disney, kind of vegetating, when Dawn Steele, who was the first woman to run,
Of course.
yeah, a major studio, Columbia, fell out with her employers, went to her friends, Katzenberg and Eisner at Disney, said, I started my own company. You have anything for me? And Katzenberg said to her, go down in the basement in the corner. I use 6 scripts. See if you can do anything with any of them. And she did 2. One was with Whoopi Goldberg, Sister.
Sister Act.
Yeah. And the other one was Cool Runnings. Those are the 2 that she found. And then in 97, she died of a brain tumor.
Oh, gosh.
But so the movie was always on the edge. So Turtle Taub comes in, they tell her she has money to make it, they cut the money and they keep cutting the budget.
Because I mean, the budget was relatively low, but it made it was 17 million was the budget, $17 million, and it made 155 million at the box office.
155 million in the US.
Yes, in the US. Yeah.
Probably another 100 million. It was the most profitable movie
It was incredibly profitable.
of that period, and maybe
that
to
year,
date.
That year, 1993. Let's not forget Jurassic Park,
Yeah.
Schindler's List,
Yeah.
Nightmare Before Christmas,
Yeah.
Hocus Pocus.
$1 billion movies,
Huge
but they were
movies.
costing 300-400 million.
Yeah. So Cool Runnings is this incredibly
It
profitable.
was, yeah.
Did you see any of that?
No, we. So this is all the lessons you learn in life, and it wasn't until, you know, I read Dawn Steele's autobiography during lockdown, and in it she has a line. So she used to work for Penthouse.
Penthouse is in Penthouse Magazine.
Penthouse magazine.
Okay, right.
So she was a merchandiser.
Yeah.
And she built the merchandising section. And she went to the owner and they agreed a percentage of net sales as her salary. So she goes to him at the end of the
And
year.
then she makes one of the most beloved children's films of the 90s.
Yeah, but
Or
she was
family films.
involved with when Sally met Harry, Top Gun,
Yeah.
all. She did that. If you
Well,
look at her
I need to
body
read
of
this.
work,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I know the name, of course, and I
Yeah.
know, I know some of the things she's done. But wow,
tremendous body of
Yeah.
work. She goes to her employer and she says, all right, no, I need my percentage of the net. This is what I figure it is. Like $200,000. Yes, all right, fine. Sends her to the accountant. So the accountant works all the thing and then sends to her the other day that, she owes about $125,000. Her mother tell her there is no net. So that's the other thing. So we took, I think I got $20,000. We took very little money up front, but we had 2.5% of net proceeds. Well,
Right.
there is no net.
I think they always, because they can find costs in movies, right, to prevent
They
To
do
prevent
a lot of
paying
things.
out.
So I really got into
the movie
this.
industry is a really rough one for people looking to
Right.
make percentages on.
They do all sorts of shenanigans, including at the, when they go to, they put the movies out now, the syndication for showing on other platforms back in those days. I guess now it will be streaming or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they never sell a movie. They sell a bucket. So they'll sell 5 movies.
Right.
1 hit, 4 dots. When the income comes, they distribute it.
I see.
Of course, the hit doesn't get any of that money, right?
Right, because they've been duds. And, yeah.
So they put all of that into their duds. And then, so if you have a percentage of net, you're toast, which is what we were.
Yeah, so you made $20,000 from
Yeah.
Cool Runnings. And the other team members, did they get the same or did they get...
No, I think I was the highest athlete, but there were like 16 people, that started with George and William.
Yeah.
George actually took some reimbursement, which was due to him. He put a lot of money in there. William took some reimbursement, and then the money was split up. So that basic, but we're all great with that because we're going to, there was this 2.5% of net. So,
Yeah, so you're there
quarter
thinking,
century later, I find out that there is no net.
Yeah, I mean, so it was a film that you felt slighted by, and then you didn't make all that much money from because of the net. So I can see quite easily how you could resent that for a period of time.
Yeah, but it is business, and it's things that you need to you do have to go into it with your eyes open, but you also have to. We could have held out for a lot more things and not have a movie. That's just the bottom line, right? So the commercial decision. These things are never easy.
You said your personal opinion. Hollywood loves a remake.
Yeah,
is that it shouldn't be remade. Completely with you. Completely agree. But you say that there could be a sequel. Do you think that there will be a sequel?
I thought it would be automatic. I actually wrote a script, which I've since
You wrote
lost.
a script?
I wrote a script for Cool Runnings 2.
Hang on, did you say you lost it?
Yeah, I think so. I think I did it on Word. We're talking now 1994, 95.
So you wrote a script for Cool Runnings 2.
Yeah.
And you've lost it.
Yeah.
Tal, can you remember the strokes well enough to take us through it? Or?
No, it was basically the story of the 94 team and coming out of this and building a competitive team, getting a new coach. Where
would you
I had
have
this
included
Canadian penciled in guy who played God? What's his name? Carey.
Right, Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey, yeah, that was my idea.
I absolutely love Jim Carrey.
Yeah,
I mean, around the time Cool Runnings came out, so that was 93, 94, I think. Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura.
Yeah.
The Mask was 95.
Yes.
So within about 18 months, that guy was.
I remember I went to Chris Blackwell. You know of him?
Chris Blackwell.
Yeah. So Chris Blackwell actual family home is like a mile from where I grew up when I went back to Jamaica. But anyway, so I got to know Chris, and I took the script to him and went through it, and he was indulging me. I was kind of a naive. Where he said, "Boy, Jim Carrey comes with a big number."
Oh, he does, especially
in those days.
Yeah, I mean, if you say you wrote this in 94. Yeah. If you would have gone to Jim Carrey in 92, that's a very different situation.
So
so you wanted Jim Carrey to be the coach in Cool Runnings 2.
Yes.
In your script of Cool Runnings 2. That's who you wrote it for.
I told him, you can work with this, but you need to give us $1 million and we'll give you an even bigger story. And then I never heard back from him. But then he was out shortly after. I mean, I suspect Disney was in a fair amount of turmoil. So that's probably in a basement somewhere. But
so you think that script does exist somewhere, just you don't have
it does. This is 94. We're in floppy disk time.
Yeah.
Right. It's not
somebody's got this somewhere. So because I heard you in one interview where somebody said, "What do you think your legacy is?" And you answered Cool Runnings.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't have to be. It could be Cool Runnings 2.
It could be.
Did your brother write a book?
Yeah. So he wrote a book called Cool Runnings and Beyond.
Yeah. And it's kind of the real
behind real life in a way.
Yeah.
So I have a book coming out with we should get into pre-sales in early June.
Okay.
Called the Jamaican Bobsleigh Captains. So I've written it in conjunction with a guy called Ben Sturenberg, who's a neighbor where I am, but he's retired from U.S. government service and expert in analysis and research and so on.
Wow, okay, so you got somebody that's got a lot of
I wanted somebody to do it. I didn't want to write my own story. I didn't want to bring my own biases to it as the only position.
Okay.
And I don't have the expertise to do it. I mean, the level of research that he went to. So it's a good mix, but we spend hours and hours talking, explaining, going through things, and then we write up and critique. We rewrite. I think we have a pretty
pre-sale. So who's the publisher, or how are you getting out there?
we're publishing with an online only platform called Book Baby.
Book Baby, yeah.
Yeah, but they will do Amazon. They have their own online, and then we do a hard copy on demand.
Yep.
And then later on, we may do a hard cover version, and some special versions. But I wanted a book that would be the bobsleigh book.
Yeah.
So it goes a lot into the sport itself and the background and a lot of characters that I met, because there were some fantastic athletes in my time.
Are you still friends with many?
There's Todd Hayes, who won a silver medal for the USA in 2002. He actually got into bobsleigh because of Jamaican Bobsleigh.
I mean, so when you say your legacy being Cool Runnings is not and Jamaican Bobsled, you will have inspired so many people.
Yeah, but people will always only know me up to this point. As you're saying, there's a chance.
Hey,
Cool
listen,
Runnings.
Cool Runnings too, my friend. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no,
and
one
the
of
book.
Yes, 30 years on, and I wanted to tell a story in hindsight, because I didn't know at the time that I wouldn't better that position or the things I fully intended to, and it didn't happen. But I didn't realize nobody else would do it either. The highest finish by a black male driver in Olympic competition, that kind of stuff. And I was 6 years from crashing. So there are elements in there that I think are relevant today.
Hugely. I think the whole, it's not about how hard you get hit. It's about how many times you can get hit and get back up and keep on going. Right? It's the Rocky quote. And that's, I think, naturally as human beings, we gravitate towards people that do keep moving. Like the end for you isn't the crash. And I think that's important for us to try and, and it feels like that's something you're intent on getting out. The end wasn't the crash. That was the beginning.
That was the beginning. Exactly.
Yeah. So we talked earlier on, your father being a minister, you said you were a religious family, and you said that you lost something of your faith. When was that?
Ultimately that's it's ongoing and in different stages. But a big stage for me was actually in bobsleigh in the years in between 88 and 92, and trying to make that next step in performance. And I already had Howard Seiler walk out at a certain instance, which drove me inward. And then I remember clearly it was at Calgary track, walking down the track one night, looking at the track between curve 3 and curve 4. But I just had a revelation that I'm on my own here. This is by yourself. And what happens is going to depend on what you do and what you can influence.
Did you feel alone?
Yeah. There was a lot of struggle going on at that time with the equipment and athletes and sliding and money and so on.
Yeah.
So it was hard and kind of wavering. I'd say no. I am agnostic, certainly in the point that I am not prepared to say that there is no God or something bigger doesn't exist or so on. Frankly, I really don't know. It might be, it mightn't be. If it is, whatever the being is, may well not be that concerned with you or I, but we can certainly be concerned with ourselves and the people around us and live what we see, which is kind of where I am. Where I'm at is to live what I see and know honestly. And in the event that there's an afterlife, then I'll explain myself. And if I end up in eternal damnation, then, well.
I like, the thought that, I'm not going to live my life just in case I can be eternally saved and or I'm not going to live my life just with the threat of damnation. I love and I'm loved not because of those things. I'm a good person. The notion that atheists or agnostics can't have a good moral compass without scripture, whatever religion, is a nonsense. You know, the reason I don't go around killing people isn't because I might well be, judged for it in an afterlife. It's because, I have a moral code that transcends, what something that was written thousands of years ago, or, that was told to somebody, that was told to somebody, it was told to somebody, it was written, that was translated, that was, I don't need that to live a good life personally.
No, I don't. I spent most of my life, and it started from being very young, trying to structure a way of seeing things and to think clearly about things, and clear thinking, not critical thinking. I dislike the term critical thinking because it raises in me a sort of concept of criticizing and looking for the faults in any situation you have. And I think clear thinking, i.e., realizing that this thing has several perspectives and there are other forces at work, and some of them are, these forces differ in the situation and the application. Like one of the things I think the problems today is that our moral magnifying glass is way too big. Everything is looked at first through a moral perspective, as if we have a lock on morality in the here and now. And what I think is that in 100 years, people will be looking at us the way we look at the guys who went into the First World War and caused it, right? That's not barbaric. That's a mad people.
I look at it and think homelessness. In a couple of 100 years, I hope. I hope.
Provided we are here, people will.
It would just be like loads of AI bots just walking around.
Yeah.
But I just think that we'll look back at homelessness and think, what the hell why didn't we? What were we doing? How did we not help these people? It's recognizing those things. But
so,
do you miss having that faith?
It's a hard way to live. I'd much rather live knowing that it's all okay.
Yeah,
it's going to be, but I can't. Honestly, I can't live like that, and I can't control everything that's around me either. And
see, I'm still learning that bit. I'm still learning.
Yeah, so you don't have an anchor. People need an anchor. I think people need faith because the difficulty of living without it is immense, and the peril is great as well. Charles Darwin took 20 years after he finished his theory of evolution before he published it, because he was agonizing over what that would do.
I love when people criticize the notion of a theory of evolution, like a theory is something that
it's fixed. It didn't. But look, all those years ago, he's worked the things.
Absolutely.
So have a different theory,
but
we can't just say, "Oh,
no." Again, science is movable, but that science, there's the saying that if everything was to finish tomorrow and we were all to come back and civilization was to return, science would be proven again. All the things that we know to be true would be proven again. We'd have different religious tomes. And that to me says everything. The fact that I could be geographically displaced at birth, I could be 2,000 miles southeast and think something very, very different. And that to me is, what does that tell you? It tells you that people grew with necessary stories and necessary to them truths.
And experiences.
But then experiences mold us, right? And
absolutely. And the whole communities and regions. This is true.
Now, how did your family feel about that? Your mum in particular, because I know you said that your dad passed in 2010.
Conversation. My mother and I have had on and off for a lot, and she has had her personal journey and so on, and she has her faith, which has been now honed, and she's living by it and with it, and that's great.
Again, I don't want. This is something that people think of anybody that might denote themselves agnostic or atheist. Is people think that we're there to try and strip it away from people. I want you to, if that's what makes you feel something, please have that. I want people to feel that's that the whatever that gives them is beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's when that extends to control and worse than control.
Yeah.
And it's when you try and levy that control over me or my children or anything like that, that's when I've got a problem. Personal faith, if that's what you believe, beautiful, wonderful.
Yeah, so this is the danger, and there's a guy. His name is not to hand, but he wrote a book called A Moral Animal, and it tracks Darwin's journey, basically between finishing up with all his stuff, developing the theory of evolution, and eventually publishing it. And he has a final chapter called Darwin Gets Religion. And this is a basic thing, but as human beings, we if we don't have a concept of an externality that's greater than ourselves, then the chances of us becoming monsters is greatly increased. If you don't have something bigger to live for than yourself, it's very problematic. And we have had people set religion aside. The Nazis are a famous example, and it caused a fair amount of problems.
I can point to one or two, just one or two,
Yeah, so
alternative,
right? But people, I think they like Jung and these guys that talk about the ego and how is it controlled, and this is a real problem for anybody who is alive. And a lot of people approach it through religion. A lot of people use religion for a lot of other reasons. Yeah. And a lot of religions are in actuality imperialistic ideologies that are just building systems.
Agreed.
So that's a problem. But I think every individual has a real problem with themselves. And not everybody is equipped. It takes a great deal of upbringing and exposure and then reflection.
A lot of reflection, I think.
A lot of reflection, right.
And to understand your own personal moral guidance and
exactly.
And communities play a part in that. But, again, you have to know yourself. And, you're not wrong. We are alone to a degree.
Yeah.
But we're not alone. We're kind of alone together.
We are alone together. But another concept is that we all have a final moment when we die, when we're really truly alone.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody has died with anybody else, really. That is a uniquely personal experience. And I think if more people spent more time reflecting on that inevitability and then working back from that,
to create
what does this mean?
And what do I? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It would, maybe would have something more coherent and sensible. But we don't. We have what we have, and human nature is what it is.
Human nature is fascinating because I've had family members in and out of prison.
Yeah.
And family members that have found religion inside prison. And it's a way to forgive yourself. And that's what I've found. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying that, I think the religions, the base ones, do encourage a forgiveness of oneself. That is, there's nothing, there's nothing I can say that's negative to that, other than the fact that maybe you're looking for an externality rather than considering your own. Let's not call them failings, but areas where you could improve. I don't think none of us are the finished article, right?
So no,
because again, you've been in situations where you've both in competitive sport and in your army career where you've been in serious harm or serious way of harm, at least.
Yeah.
Do you have faith to fall back on then, or do you have to trust in yourself and the people around you?
No, I do what I can as far as I'm able. Yeah. I do think that in the universe there is a force that acts, which is on the opposite side to our religious understanding. So chance, I think, is one of, if not the greatest force in the universe, greater than gravity, so on, and who knows what it's doing. But I think there's a beauty in randomness that brings us kind of opportunity, experiences, and it's hard to say good or bad or so on, but it brings these things, and they come to you, and then it's up to you to recognize and try to make the best of what you have. And then there's also a letting go, which is, you say you're struggling with trying to understand, but not everything is within your control. And sometimes you have to relax, take the bounces and so on, and look for the exit for when it comes and be ready to go. I think that's what I think that's what I've learned, and I understand it's a very personal lesson, and nobody else can learn it. And people have to come to their own understanding, and not many people are equipped to make that journey.
It's hard to spot those things as they happen to you, isn't it? And I think a lot of the people I speak to on this are people that have grasped the opportunities and, support and esteem along the way. They grasped at those opportunities. Maybe they didn't know what they were at the time, but they've grasped at them. But my concern for lots of people, and I say this is almost a love letter to to people I know too, doing this, because speaking to successful people that have achieved, gone through resilience, had to learn resilience or had to build resilience and gone through challenges. I want people to say to notice that, if you turn away from the potential of those opportunities coming your way, and people do, you can choose to wake up and be happier. And people don't want to hear it. You can choose to wake up and grasp at the opportunities that might only be tenuous. It might be, this tiny string of an opportunity.
Right.
And that, I think, for me, is where I know that I butt heads with some people, because they're like, Rich, you're talking nonsense. The fact is, it's not that easy in life. Well, no, but each step leads to another step.
And one of the things is life is struggle.
That's all it is. Like, Christ, aren't we lucky now that it isn't as much of a struggle as it was?
No, yeah, but
life is,
I was talking to a group the other day. A friend of mine brought me in, talked to his youngsters in business and so on, and then he said to me, well, what are you going to say to them? And I said, I kind of need them to understand that living is struggle. You can choose your struggles, or you can try to avoid it, and the struggles will find you. And in struggle, you're going to suffer. And out of all of that, you have to find a way to try and to keep going.
Yeah.
And he said to me that, he said, Tal, these are young people. You can't tell them about struggle, much less suffering. And I'm saying that, man, if we have raised a generation that can't hear that, we're in some
My
real
concern
trouble.
is that we are raising a generation that can't hear that. And I don't just say that as this, I'm 36 now, so I'm not like, I'm not like, but I've seen the schooling system, and I've seen the ease with which one can say, I'm anxious, or I can't sit in, I feel like I can't be part of this, part of this exam or whatever. And this isn't just, there'll be people listening to this that are like shaking their fists, but the fact is, it's made all the more easy now for children to say, actually, I don't feel okay doing that, or I'm triggered by this, or whatever it is. And they're taking the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance doesn't build any resistance to anything.
Nothing, yeah.
And that's my concern. Like, it's a concern for me, for my children, particularly for my children. I want them to recognize that, there's always somebody out there that's got it harder, and it's all relative.
Yeah.
And this podcast, certainly, or this interview show, what we're doing isn't to try and find the person with the worst life, but it's to try and shine a light on resilience, on optimism, on meeting a challenge, on success and consistency. Do you know what? I appreciate these sort of conversations, because again, it's a selfish act talking to you. As beautiful as it is, no, Tal, it is. Yeah. I love hearing from people like you, but also it's a selfish act, because I want to see what of myself I can see in you. I recognize in myself flaws and also the things that drive me, and the things that drive me are the things that weren't in my control. It's called The Starting Line, the podcast. For a reason. We all start somewhere. Yeah. It's what we do with it.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to your conversation with Brian Cox, and if you remember, you started off with the billionaires situation and so on. But the thing is, I think there's a tendency for us to I mean, these things are real, to focus on inequality and but things that we actually don't have any direct control over, that are going to be difficult to influence. And by becoming fixated on that, miss what we could be doing in this moment and about ourselves. And for whatever reason, some people have a ton of cash and some people have none, and you might be at your starting line, but it's your starting line. And the other thing is that when you start moving, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot for the last couple of years, is ambition versus purpose. Now, the two things can end up in a similar place, but the landscape is going to be very different. If you are pursuing ambition ruthlessly, it implies. If you're living out of ambition of what you want, what you can get to, you can be, what people are going to see about, and so on, the people around you are going to suffer for that. And, at the end of the day, you may realize that all you have acquired and all you have gotten, it's not really amounting to anything, and you really question yourself as to what was this life all about. I can tell you are purpose driven when I listen to you, which is one of the reasons why I approached it, because I think it might be useful for you as you go on to frame this properly. But I think you are purpose driven, and in pursuing your purpose, you may become very wealthy. I don't know.
I've got a 10-year-old PR agency that's doing very well, but for me, I've always cared about the people in it. If a happy team does great work makes happy clients,
right,
and the cycle continues.
Right.
It starts with making people happy, and nobody can be happy all the time. It starts with caring about your team. For me, it's back to sport. It's all sport. I run my company like a sports team. Because you're not always going to be, you need to put your arm around people. Sometimes it's carrot, sometimes it's stick, but rarely is it stick. When, human psychology is, all you want to do is be seen. You want to be loved, supported, encouraged, acknowledged, move on, and that's kind of how I try and manage the team. So it's doing okay. Is it the best?
But to pick up on what you said about happiness, because the pursuit of happiness is also dangerous.
Agreed.
Happiness is a state for a moment in time, whatever it is. But for me, it is the flip side of depression. I think both things are necessary, but neither should become chronic.
Agreed.
All right. Chronic happiness is essentially heroin addiction. And you get chronic depression, but both things generally end up in the same place.
Yeah.
When you're pursuing your purpose, there are occasions when you're happy, there are occasions when you're sad, but because you are purpose driven, that is where you try.
What's your purpose
suffer,
now?
try. My purpose is to prepare people for an encounter with reality, because that isn't done in our society. Most people encounter reality on their deathbed, and it's too late at that point, right? Encounter the reality of your mortality, the reality of the important things in life, the reality of maximizing your personal potential by preparing yourself the best you can be to recognize and exploit any opportunities that maybe chance brings your way, right? That is my purpose, and it's not a field that's overflowing with people, because it's talking about struggle. Anything worth doing is a struggle. Worse than that, struggle can't be avoided. If you run from struggle,
I don't know a single human. Do you know a single human being who's gone through any of life without struggle or challenge?
There's struggle and pain, and the more you try and run from it, is the more painful it becomes. And then you're on prescription drugs, and then next you're on illegal drugs, and so on. It's a spiral. you have to develop your mechanisms to deal with your suffering and not to make it chronic. Understand that there it must happen and we're working through it and so on. And then you keep trying forward and forward. Add your bit to the human story.
I think that will be your legacy as well. I think no, it will. Like, that's incredibly well put, and it sounds like you're out there talking to people.
Yes.
And I mean, things like this will only, again, amplify that message, and I hope it does. And your book will hopefully. I mean, I'm sure your book will touch on that as a key message. Of the pursuit of that reality.
Yes.
And understanding struggle. I think that's probably a lovely place to wrap this up, is to say, I don't think your legacy is Cool Runnings. I think you've got a lot to, I mean, you're a young man still. You are, you look like you fit young man.
Thank you.
No, you got a lot going on. So I can't wait to read the book. Please do let me know when it, I'll be the first in line to pre-order. And yeah, Cool Runnings 2. Anybody watching this? There's a script knocking around somewhere, and it's good.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about. I mean, we did a lot of Cool Running stuff, but we got onto some.
Yeah, I mean, the main
stuff that's close to my heart.
Main thing for me is finding out who you are, why you are who you are, and I think we got closer to that. And this has been both fun and really, just eye-opening. You're an inspiring guy. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Really
Cheers,
pleasure.
Tal. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thanks. And we're back. Hope you enjoyed that one. Again, I know it was a longer one. Cool Runnings, eh? What a film. I might go watch it. But more to the point, there's a script knocking around for Cool Runnings, for another one for Cool Runnings 2. Tal's book. Keep an eye out for that. I'll be promoting it on social the second it's available. And yeah, just thank you. Thank you as ever. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for commenting. All those good things. It massively helps. It gets it out there. And I really appreciate it. Our social media is Starting Line Show, Starting Line Podcast on various things. Go and have a look. StartingLinePod.com. You'll find it all from there, including all the episodes. If you could review this, a few of you, you've said you will. You lied to my face. I'm joking. Reviews would be wonderful. Everything helps get us out there. And we are, it's called the Starting Line for a reason. We're still on the journey of moving this along. I mean, from a consistency perspective, that's episode 26. Now, most podcasts don't make it past episode 1, even fewer make it past 5, 10, etc. So we're on our way. The guests are great. We've got another fantastic one for you coming up on Monday or next Monday, and a few more, good few more already banked, some brilliant ones already scheduled. Keep the reviews coming, keep the shares coming. Subscribe if you don't already, wherever you watch or listen. Oh, by the way, we're on Spotify video now. So if you watch the podcast on Spotify, this is up there now too. If you're already watching this and you're watching me say that, that's weird. Right, that's enough waffle. Enough from me. Have a lovely, lovely, lovely week. Goodbye. Forever. See you in a bit.